there's one that sticks out in my mind that it's just there very vividly. It was Op Simpson. Second squad was coming up to the house, and there was a guy in a flatbed truck with a vest on, and he sat up and he popped himself off, and
you watched it.
It erased him, and I'm just waiting to hear like the call for the medic on the radio, and it was like that, like perfect silence. It was full on, grenade fight, and there was 10 guys inside the house. They had strategically only had 2 guys going out at any given time ever, because they knew they were being watched. One of the people that squirted out the back, I shot, and he was kind of, but he was taking fire from, I think, 3 different positions as he was running. And he had 6 holes in him. When I got up to him, still alive. And I looked at him, I was like, this is a fucking kid. He's probably 14 years old, at best, with the interpreter come up, and I remember asking him, through the interpreter, like, what would your parents say that you're here? And he said that, well, they'd be proud of me.
Welcome to Mic Drop, the podcast where relevancy is irrelevant and we don't give a shit about your feelings. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He served for 4 years in the U.S. Army as a Ranger, most of which with the 3rd Ranger Battalion. He did 3 deployments with them, 2 to Afghanistan, 1 to Iraq, and coincidentally, the one in Iraq was with our good buddy Nick Irving, who's been on the show a few times. That was his first deployment, and Leo's 3rd, so he was the salty old dog for Nick. He was awarded an RCOM with V for Valor and a JCOM with V for Valor also.
No, that was no V on the
just the JCOM.
The regular old JCOM.
Yeah, for the Red Wing, Operation Red Wings recovery, which for sure we will get into. He is the author of a number of books, both solo and collaboration pieces, some of which are Lest We Forget, On Assimilation, Lucky Joe, which I have a copy of now, signed by Leo, which is pretty awesome, In Love and War, With a Pen, War and After, and War and Pieces. Did I miss any solo projects?
That's most of them. I think that covers it, yeah.
He is now a full-time author, and if McSteamy and McDreamy had a love child during Ranger School, ladies and gentlemen, he would fucking be it. Welcome to the stage, Leo Jenkins.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thanks. That was great.
Thanks for coming on. I know you live in fucking Mexico now, which is a story in and of itself. But you're back here in the Dallas area for this book, I'm assuming. Or?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So
is that like a release thing, or how's that working?
Yeah, we're releasing it kind of right now. It's like I said, you've got now I think the 2nd copy that anybody has. So it hasn't hit anyone's hands yet.
Yeah.
It's being sold now, and I think they'll ship out next week sometime.
Yeah, right on. I'd like to take a quick second to shout out and thank our sponsor for today's podcast, Origin Labs and Jocko Fuel. Jocko Fuel is a great product. He's got a ton of products actually within the Jocko Fuel line. The guests and I enjoy them on the show. And outside, I take a lot of the supplements. I've got some of the Origin Lab jeans, boots, gis, and it's just all around American industry. They do a fantastic job really re-revolutionizing American industry from start to finish. It's all American made, all American sourced. Everything start to finish is made right there in-house, and they really do a phenomenal job creating the products and fulfilling the whole ball of wax. They've been a huge supporter of the Mic Drop podcast for a while now, and I really can't thank Jocko Fuel and Origin Labs enough for the job that they do for us. And so thank you to you guys. I'd also like to say thank you to our other sponsor, Resilience Premium CBD. Resilience is excited to offer all Mic Drop listeners a 20% off discount on all products for 2 weeks from when this podcast is live using the discount code MICDROP at checkout. That's 2 words, MICDROP at checkout. I'd also like to say that Resilience is a great company that works in conjunction with Trico CBD, and all military veterans and first responders receive 35% off. Yes, that's 35% off for all military veterans and first responders. and that's through the military and first responders program. You just have to sign up at resilientcbd.com/military first responders discount. In terms of about resilience, generally speaking, it's a premium CBD that I use. Again, it works in conjunction with the Tricos brand for the everyday athlete. That's www.resilientcbd.com. And Resilience was really born with the founders who are military veterans as well, personally experienced the effects and impact that CBD had on their own mental and physical obstacles. Their focus was sharper, mental stress was calmed, fitness stamina increased, and their bodies felt less pain, inflammation after super intense workouts. A lot of times most people and people are able to either wean off entirely or significantly reduce pain management therapy. This is a shared vision among the founders that this incredible supplement had not only changed their lives, but had the power to provide unbelievable benefits to family, friends, athletes, fellow veterans, and ultimately the entire fitness community. So big shout out to Resilience for their product as well as the Trico stuff. We sure appreciate their support. Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter?
Lord of the Rings.
Is that right? Do you hate Harry Potter, or you just?
I don't hate Harry Potter. I think time is on Lord of the Rings side. It's the writing behind it. Not to take anything away from Harry Potter, but it's Lord of the Rings has stood the test of time.
Yeah.
Where Harry Potter is the new kid in town.
Yeah, no, for sure. I am curious from an author's standpoint to think of Tolkien's ability to think of that back when he did is, to me, probably the most impressive part of it.
The intricacy of the world that he created, there's maps that he created, and he wanted to make sure that the distances in the maps were accurate, and given the height of the Hobbit, how far could they really walk in a given day, and to create that level of accuracy in a world that you essentially created in your own head, while still unfurling an epic tale. It was accurate in the sense of this total creation.
Yeah. Do you think he was crazy and or on drugs when he fucking did anything?
I hope so. I think most writers are either one, the other, or a combination of the two.
Yeah, I hear you.
At least the successful ones, the ones we want to read.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah. Speaking of which, do you who is your favorite author and the book by them?
It changes. There's people who I kind of fall into pockets with. I really enjoy Steinbeck's writing. John Steinbeck. I love what Kerouac did with prose and freed up. I've been on a real big Kurt Vonnegut kick lately, and I think Slaughterhouse-Five is one of those books that everyone should read. The experience that he had as a POW in World War II, and then surviving the firebombing at Dresden, to be able to take that and put it into a book was incredible. But what he did with the parallel storylines and everything else as well, like there was a very profound incident that he was involved with, but he also wrote it incredibly well and creatively.
Why? This is my perception, so if it's inaccurate, by all means, fucking correct me. But to me, it seems like there aren't really the classic author caliber writers anymore. Like even the Crichtons and the what's the other fucking guy, Tom Clancy. I mean, shit like that are super popular. Even Stephen King. I mean, I guess maybe is one of the last verging on brilliant type of authors, at least from my perspective. But it seems like, I guess, that there isn't that level of magnitude and competency when it comes to writers nowadays. Do you think that that's accurate?
It's a tough row to plow now. There's a lot more to contend with, and the writers of those previous eras, people were entertaining. They were being entertained by books, by my magazine articles, short stories. Like reading was entertainment, and now there are so many other forms of entertainment that you just don't have as many people that might have been a writer of a book, an author. They might be writing screenplays now that talent is going to storytelling in other places, to make movies, to like actually be able to make a living off of your writing.
Like the script for Back to the Future, as an example.
Yes, that was definitely the one I was thinking of.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, to me, I guess agreed. It for sure makes sense that it's harder to compete with now. I guess it seems like, I don't know, maybe with technology and education and everything being kind of watered down and generic by comparison to what it seems like it used to be. Maybe that's a factor. Hell, I don't know. But what's the most valuable thing that you learned in medic school?
How to be calm in a situation that would typically excite other people, right? I think that was the number one thing that the valuable thing that a medic has, and like first and foremost is when something is really fucked up and somebody's hurt, is to be able to remain calm, and to convey that calm to them, to calm them down, and that definitely was something that it's valuable in the sense of emergency medicine, but then if you can take that and apply that to any other situation that might be tumultuous, might be difficult, that might be exciting, that if you can keep your calm in those types of things, if it's surfing a big wave or any other thing, that the cooler heads will prevail, and through that medic course, I definitely learned how to just be calm in a situation that would be kind of exciting otherwise.
Would you say that you learned that more there than, say, Ranger School or being in a Ranger battalion?
Yeah, I think that was something that was, absolutely. Medic school is one of those situations where, because you have a patient who is freaking out, and you're not only trying to maintain your own calm, you're trying to instill it in them. And the repetitions, the reps that you get in that day in and day out, doing trauma lanes, I mean, you have to come away with that.
What's the biggest bedside manner difference between Army medics and fucking civilian doctors? No thumbs in the ass?
That's one of them, but the 3 Ps of special operations medicine, right? So pain is the patient's problem, is probably the biggest difference.
That sounds like the U.S. military across the board. Motrin and ice, fucker. Get back to work. What is your daily routine?
It varies a little bit. I liked it. For the longest time, I was like a no routine person. I was like, I just, whatever it is. But right now,
let me take one step back. Let's talk about your morning routines. All right. I said daily, I meant morning.
I get up a little before 6, try to beat my toddler, so I can meditate. I meditate.
Like you literally beat him?
I beat her. Yeah, only.
I try to beat my fucking toddler, but right when I wake up.
Try to beat her out of bed, right? Otherwise, she'll be coming in and climbing on my face and demanding waffles. Yeah. Meditation for probably the first 15 minutes. I make a cup of coffee, and I go straight to the break and have my cup of coffee while the first waves are rolling in, and then I'll go out and surf for an hour and a half, 2 hours, take my daughter to preschool, go to the gym for a little bit, and then I'll go into my library and either read or write for most of the rest of the day. What
kind of, I guess, direction do you take that, and what inspires you that way, I guess? Like, if you decide to write something or read something, or like what drives what you do, how you do it, what you write about, what you read about? Is there anything?
It's really just whatever the fuck I feel like doing anymore. Like it's impulsive, it's,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. It literally, it's like, there's not really, there's a few big writing projects that I'm doing right now. I'm working on a couple different books, and I'm perpetually writing and trying to tinker with different genres and different things. So if I'm feeling, a certain way when I wake up and I'm like, I feel like I need to write today, then I write. If I don't feel that way, then I spend that time reading.
Are there ever days where you don't feel like doing either and you're just like, fuck it, it's Pornhub all day? I mean, but
it's rare, but yeah, it happens, man. And like where I'm at, like we don't have, like, we have a TV, but we don't have any channels. We have like Netflix, right? And occasionally I'm like, I would like to just sit on the couch all day and just watch sports, and I don't ever do that, but it hits, maybe like once a month. And I usually just resolve, like, I'm just gonna watch movies today.
Yeah. You mentioned, so you have a daughter. Is her mom there, or is it just you guys? Or
yes, she's there with her now. I hope. Otherwise, my daughter is probably stealing hubcaps off of somebody's car.
That's good shit. What role does she play in your day to day professionally that way?
The daughter or
The wife.
the wife? So she works from home as well. She's a therapist, and she does most of her stuff online. And it's been an interesting thing because it's like the two of us and our daughters. It's our family of three. There's no other family members, and we live in a small town, rural Mexico, and to find the balancing act of when she works and when I work has been a journey, and we're kind of tuned into that now. Where again, now that our daughter's doing preschool, we have about 20 hours a week where that's occupied, but we shift back and forth. Where there's certain days of the week where she has all of her clients stacked up, and those are the days when I'm picking the kid up from school and hanging out with her, going getting ice cream and all that stuff. And so we're kind of in that 50-50. I'm gonna walk that back. I'm probably more like 60-40. She takes the bulk of the parenting responsibility, so I can lock myself up in my closet and pretend like I'm writing.
I was planning on getting into the whole Mexico thing far later, but since we're talking about it, I'm curious, why Mexico? Is it surfing? Is it cost of living? Is it what?
There's a combination of things. So I was traveling. I'd sold everything I owned minus a backpack. I was living in Denver, owned some gyms there, and I kind of just took off and traveled and went once around the world going west, and then ended up in Alaska. I wanted to drink a beer in every state, and I was driving down, and I got to this. I went through Baja, the peninsula. I got to the end of it, and I was going to stay one day in this little town and then take the ferry over to mainland Mexico and continue driving south till I got to South America. And I went into this seedy little dive bar that was there called the Little Lebowski Lounge. It was really great. I mean, a mean white Russian,
Yeah.
And I met a girl there, and we moved in together, I think 4 days later.
Jesus.
And we lived together in that little town for about 6 months until she got detained for being an undocumented worker there. She was teaching yoga classes and she didn't have the paperwork. And so
Is she American?
she's Canadian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
My how the tables have turned.
yeah.
My how the turntables.
Yeah. So she was asked somewhat politely to get the fuck out of the country, right?
Yeah.
So then we kicked out and we went and traveled all through Central America together, and came back to that same little town. We liked it. We had friends there. We didn't really intend on necessarily settling down, but it was there was a piece of land for sale, bought the land, and it just kind of happened that way. And it provided all of the things, like that little area provided all of the things that we both really wanted. I love the freedom of the place. It is, it is really like the last bastion of the once Wild West. It's dirt roads, and there's not a radar gun within 100 miles of my house. And, you take care of your own shit there, like nobody's coming. They do have a volunteer fire department, but more often than not, they don't have gas to put in the truck to come out. You got to take care of your own shit there. So I like that. I like that freedom. And it has that. There's a surf break out in front, which is really nice. And there is an international airport to get the family in an hour and a half away. So it checked a lot of boxes. And if flying out of Cabo to get here is, it's a 2-hour flight. It's easy. It's really, I don't feel like it's any different than if I were to live in Phoenix and come here. It's as far as like accessing any major metropolitan city in the United States. So it checks a lot of those boxes, and the cost of living is really, really pretty good as well.
Yeah. So an American vet and a Canadian yoga teacher walk into a bar in Baja. Like it's the start of a fucking joke.
Yeah, it's a start of a book that I'm working on now. Yeah. But
so in terms of the freedom and nobody's coming and whatever, I'm curious. I mean, you hear. I mean, I've spent some time in Mexico, but being stationed in San Diego for 12 years, I went down there a number of times, but I haven't been down there in 15 years probably or so. And I guess I'm curious, from what you read, hear, see in the media, which I know a lot of times is misrepresented, but I still, I'm absolutely aware that there's a significant cartel presence and Wild West type of handling your own shit. You got two gringos down there, raising a family like do you get fucked with, or
No.
I mean, and I guess why not? Like, how is it that easy for just the two of you and a toddler to live there completely unimpeded? Is it just super misrepresented in the?
Well, so it's, Mexico is a big place, and there are parts of Mexico that are dangerous. There are parts of the United States that I wouldn't, enter in by myself. Like their neighborhoods. There's like, so where we live, it's an agricultural / fishing village of around 2,000 people. There's not like a cartel interest there. Now you go to the capital city of Baja Sur, which is La Paz, and yeah, there's a presence there. No, we'll go there, we go there, do shopping or whatever. You don't go down a dark alleyway at 2:00 in the morning looking to buy Coke, and you're going to be, all right. Don't make poor decisions with stuff. But no, I mean, the people who are around us, they're incredible, salt of the earth, hardworking, amazing people.
Yeah.
Just like you'll find anywhere if you're, if you're looking. And yeah, there is a cartel presence in that state. But it's like, saying there's a gang presence in the state of Texas. Well, there are parts of Texas where there are gang members, that doesn't mean that the whole of the place, the whole of the state is dangerous.
Yeah.
There have been, I will say that there have been, I guess like a cartel, I say executions, but hits pretty close to my house. That's happened. But they were interested in one another.
Yeah.
And it's happened once in 4 years.
Okay.
So it occurs, but it's definitely the exception, not the rule.
I guess in terms of, the most U.S. citizens, thinking of living there and now, there isn't the same constitution that you grew up with. Guns are a totally different story, in terms of legally owning them and whatever. Is there any struggle with either of those? Or, I mean, it sounds like there isn't, but how do you...
It's like, I don't think about firearms anymore because like you don't it's not really an issue. People don't have them where I live. So, and yeah, I mean, the really, really bad people do. And yeah, I'm working on the legal channels of being able to have a firearm myself there now, finally. It's just a lot of paperwork, especially for a gringo, but now that I'm a legal permanent resident, there are channels that I can go through. And the solution for me is like, I have a very well-trained 65-pound pit bull, and, he's getting the job done, as far as home security. But like I remember I came back into the States after being there for a couple of years, and I was doing something in Denver, and I was on a campus, and I've been back in the States for maybe 6 hours, and there was an active shooter on the campus, and it just brought me back to this world. Like, oh shit, like that's a concern here, is like there can be an active shooter, and I just don't think about that where I'm at.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, statistically, it at least from my perspective, it doesn't seem like, similarly to the cartel stuff there, like, yeah, the odds of you being at a campus where one happened are obviously there because it did. But, to me, I would hedge a bet that from a percentage likelihood standpoint, it's probably pretty similar, yeah?
Yeah, it's the exception, not the rule, right? But yeah, it's an interesting evening out point, right? Because like, so again, the idea of the old saloon concept, though, being in a bar, if trouble kicks up, I am like 99.999% sure that nobody in that room has a firearm. Mm-hmm. So there's an equal playing field when it comes to it, and there's been plenty of fist fights, in those places, and that's where it ends. And there's not like a thought of like, oh, someone's going to go out in their car and get a gun, like that kind of thing, which is nice. At the same time, I'd like to be the one person who has the gun in the in the environment, in the event that there is that. But it is usually it's the police and the cartels that have them. Yeah. And you can usually tell who the police are and who the cartels are.
Just like walking around.
Yeah. Again, it's the cartel presence in my neighborhood, in my town, is pretty non-existent.
Yeah. In terms of the overall politics there, like how would you describe that for a U.S. citizen by comparison?
Well, I think most people where I live just openly acknowledge that the politicians are pretty corrupt, and here there's like a
Head in the sand.
yeah, it's kind of like no, I'm not, well, your guy's corrupt, but not my guy's not, sort of a thing, and there it's kind of like, well, they all are, so that's the situation.
Yeah, amen. We'll get back to that as we come full circle, but I do want to still talk a little bit about some of the gun stuff and what have you. But where did you grow up?
I grew up kind of all around Arizona.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And what were the circumstances in terms of family, parents, siblings, household, etc.?
So my parents split when I was about 5. My father was a 30-year firefighter paramedic. He just retired a few years back from Peoria Fire Department. My mom at the time of their divorce was a nurse. Most likely where the influence for me to want to be a medic came from. My mother became addicted to drugs and kind of took a really hard path there. And we ended up, we lived with her for a while through that, and then ended up living with my father, and he raised myself and my 2 sisters pretty much on his own while he was both a full-time fire captain and paramedic and part to full-time flight medic. So he's working 2 full-time jobs to support his 3 kids. And yeah, that's...
During that time, did you see your mom much or...
Yeah, I mean, I lived with her up until like grade 5.
I mean, once she kind of went down the hard path and you lived with your dad, was that...
Yeah, it became sporadic, and then it's been like pockets of years, like 7 or 8 years where like no contact at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Even now?
Yes.
No
yeah.
shit.
And so like it was one of those things that I kind of just had to cut myself off from that relationship because it was pretty toxic. And to where it's like, oh yeah, I'll be there for, this event in your life, and then not be there and not hear from her for, at all, anything, maybe a year later. And then it just kind of pops back in. And after decades of that, you kind of have to go, okay, like you're not going to show up for me. I wrote some of these things out and with a pen and kind of just getting them out on paper. And it was last year. She discovered my writings and like when I went in the military, like she didn't even know that I was in the military until after I had graduated from Ranger and Doc. Right. Wow. So I'd been in the Army for almost a year before she even knew I had left. And same thing with a lot of my writings. She didn't know that I had written anything until after like I had a couple of books out. And she found some of that poetry that I'd written, and it's about some, probably some of the harder moments. She was suicidal. She held a gun to her head and kind of was blaming us for it when I was a kid, like witnessing this. And so I told her, I was like, I want to read this to you, to your face. And she sat and she took it and I read it out to her and we discussed it and it was actually a really great moment because she was able to apologize for a lot of that, and I was able to forgive her and say, hey, look, and there's so much power in that forgiveness to kind of clear that off. And we're all people trying to figure out this life, and just because you're a parent doesn't mean that you know everything and that you make all the right answers or right choices. And she made a lot of poor choices. But I really felt like it was probably one of the better things I've done in my adult life was to be able to just say, look, I forgive you. I'm not holding that over you anymore. I'm not holding on to it anymore. It's not dragging me down anymore. So, so that relationship has, I don't want to say maybe not fully mended, but we're good now, and that's a really good feeling.
Has her involvement in your life increased significantly since then?
Yeah, I encourage her as much as possible to be involved in her granddaughter's life and my child's life. And I've explained this to her that my daughter doesn't understand any of the mistakes that she made. And so now she has a perfect chance now, completely clean slate with this human, and she needs to show the fuck up.
Yeah.
and not make these same mistakes again. So, but yeah, it's you know, maybe people change, maybe they don't. But like that's at least an opportunity that she has now to do something that where she made mistakes in the past is to show the fuck up now.
Yeah. What drugs did she partake in?
Methamphetamines, a lot. Yeah.
And do you know if there's still an issue with that, or is she pretty good to go?
I don't think that when you've spent that much time indulged in that, in those types of chemicals, that you just stop, without significant amounts of help. And I would be pretty naive to say that isn't still occurring to some degree.
Yeah. How is the relationship with your dad now? Is it
my dad's my fucking hero?
Yeah,
he's amazing, man.
That's
yeah,
good shit.
he truly is. I mean, like, yeah, he had 3 kids to raise on his own, and like it was structured as such that he was still having to pay her child support while he was raising 3 kids.
Yeah.
And it's getting a little bit better, but a lot of times in those situations, the guy doesn't get a very fair shake.
Oh, I know it.
And he showed the fuck up, like even doing all that, every wrestling match in high school, he was there for it. He would show up with the guys, the whole engine company would come down, and, and cool. He would be there. Yeah. He showed up time and time again. He came to my medic graduation there at Bragg, and all the guys in his fire department, this was in 2004, they all palmed him 20s and 50s and said, go get those guys drunk. And like my dad was there, and it was cool, man. It was like, him being a paramedic for a while and me just graduating, but he's sitting at his table in his bar outside of Bragg, and there's probably 20 of us. And he's like, and that guy's a SEAL. He's a Navy SEAL. Like, fucking whoa, man! Like, that guy's a Green. Holy shit, man!
Yeah.
And just buying beers for everybody. And yeah, it's cool. Like, yeah, my dad is definitely my hero, and he's probably my best friend.
Yeah.
On top of that,
so needless to say, he has a huge role in your life still, and all that.
Yeah, I mean, he's still guiding me through the shit that I'm calling him up. I'm like, hey, Dad, you ever have an existential crisis around 40? It's like, like having these conversations.
What's the right
with him.
answer?
Yeah, we sit around and over the phone for hours and sip whiskey, and him on his back porch and me on my deck, and he's a great man.
Yeah.
I'm very. I don't think I'd be sitting here right now without that kind of without his influence directly.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome to hear. Does he keep in contact with your mom at all, or are they?
No, I'm trying. I'm encouraging him to do something similar, to say, hey, I forgive you, because she raked him over the coals pretty good in a lot of different ways through that whole process, and I know she's sorry for it, but like being sorry doesn't change shit. You have to put in the work and say, hey, look, I fucked up, and it's gonna be different now, and make it be different, not just say it. So,
you wrestled in high school?
Yeah, I wasn't very good.
Yeah. Any other sports?
Throughout high school, that was kind of it. I ran a bit. I was more interested in music than anything else. Played drums in a few different bands, and most of that was just to get girls' attention. But it's similar to why we play sports,
What weight did you wrestle at?
I was a small guy, man. So I entered high school. I was 4'11", 98 pounds on when I beginning my. So I wrestled 103s, and then by my senior year, I was wrestling 55s.
Oh, okay.
Hit the weights again because chicks dig dudes with cannons,
No, no.
So.
What at what point in high school or thereabouts did you kind of make the decision to that you wanted to join the Army, or when did that happen?
So it was my 19th birthday. It was September 11th, 2001. I was in the fire academy, and since I was 6 years old, watching my dad, I wanted to be a fireman. That was it. And when that happened, it was like, oh shit. I ended up getting hired on. I was a fireman for about a year and a half, and that thought was still lingering. And what we were seeing was images of 19, 20-year-olds all over the news getting ready to go into Iraq. And we'd already gone into Afghanistan, but I just kept seeing this thing, these images, and I'm like, I'm 20, these are my peers, and I have my dream. I have my American dream is settled. 20 years old, I'm on the fire department. I can, I've got it. This is what I've always wanted. But I didn't feel like I had earned it. And I just felt like I needed to go and to earn that thing. And if my peers were going, I'm going. It was, yeah. So it was like I had a talk with a dad, and like he's obviously very supportive in that moment, but it's like, you realize like you've got a really great job right now with security and all of that. And America's entering into another war. We got 2 of them going on. No parent really wants their kid to go and go through that. So, but he was still very supportive. And, so yeah, it was, September 11th, I think for myself as well as many of my peers was a catalyst towards joining the military, where I wouldn't have done it otherwise. It wasn't like I grew up playing GI Joes and all that, but it wasn't like that's what I'm going to do. It was that action that created the reaction of going in.
Yeah. So was there a specific catalyst or inspiration that drove you to Army and Rangers, or?
Yes, it was a mentor, and actually it was this guy Bob Vaughn, who was a pararescueman for about 10 years. He was hired on to my dad's fire department. My dad was his recruit training officer in the academy, and my dad, knowing to maybe not to the entire degree and severity of Bob Vaughn's experiences, but knowing that he had plenty of experience in the military, was like, if you're serious about this, you're going to go talk to this guy first and see what he has to say. And I had originally was going to sign a contract to be I think at the time it was a 91 Whiskey combat medic. And I told him this, and I was all excited about it. I was like, I'm going to go be a medic, And I think his exact words were, for a swinging dick like you, the Rangers is the only place to go. And I was like, the what, kind of thing. And he's like, no, you need to look into being a Ranger medic. If you're going to go and if you're going to go and do this, go and really fucking do it. And I was like, okay. And I started looking, and I saw the medical courses, the 18 Delta course and everything. And there was very little resources about this at the time to be able to find it. And I think it was something like an Army website that just said something about like, this is a really challenging course. And I found like a little video clip somewhere that had somebody doing the trauma lanes. And I was like, holy shit, like that's, okay, yeah, that seems like a challenge. And yeah, so it was pretty much Bob Vaughn who pointed me in that direction. He had good advice. And now I think I'm pretty sure one of his sons is on the teams now.
Oh,
he got out of buds here about 2 years ago. But,
that's cool.
Yeah, they're a warrior family for certain.
Did you find that being a firefighter and growing up wrestling and having a dad that it sounds like really inspired you, were those driving forces in terms of making the process of going through being or certifying to be considered a Ranger, all of that? Did it help with that, or what?
Absolutely.
Did you find it was still a challenge?
Absolutely. And there's having had a little bit of life experience, and I wasn't very old. I went in at 20 years old, but having that year and a half on the fire department and working as an EMT and seeing a little bit of trauma beforehand was incredibly helpful. Just having a little bit of something to lean on, and then obviously, sports beforehand, where you're learning about dedication, hard work, teamwork, all of that, those core things. To be able to take that in, very imperative. My dad and I would hunt quite a bit growing up throughout Arizona. Go javelina hunting, elk hunting, where we'd walk 12, 14 miles in a day, and with weight on your back, and from the time I was probably, the humps got longer, but from probably 6 years old on, I was shooting and hunting and hiking. All of those experiences, absolutely. You get to the point where through those particular selection processes, but then actually in Afghanistan, that like you absolutely lean on the foundation of those experiences. They're very helpful.
Yeah. Was there parts of Ranger School or RIP. Was it RIP or RASP?
It's RASP now. It was RIP. Like I had like, I was in the last hard class, as we all were, but it was the last. It was actually 3 weeks at the time, and now RASP. The entire selection process, I think, is more like 2 months.
Oh, okay.
It was different phases of it. And
was there any part of that really fucking challenged you? Was a legit gut check?
The cold for me, yeah, I don't like being cold. I'm from Phoenix, and there's another reason why I live in Mexico is because I don't like to be cold. And I went through in December, and yeah, it was icy and cold, and but that's not that's enough to make a person uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But,
Do you remember how much weight you lost in Ranger school?
No.
Wasn't too significant.
No.
Or it must not have been, I guess, if you don't remember, right? All right, so getting into, you go through all of the training. You wind up at the 3rd Ranger Battalion, which is in Savannah, right? Or Fort Benning.
Columbus, Benning, yeah.
Okay. What was that like checking in? And again, with the backdrop of you spending some time as a firefighter, you go through training. What was your kind of an initial impression of checking in at the battalion?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting being a medic because you've been in the Army now for a year and a half, but you really know nothing about your unit. You know nothing, like the medic stuff, but as far as like how to be a Ranger, there was that selection process before, but again, when I went through that 3 weeks, it was really just the gut check bit, and so it's I was kind of naive to what the job actually was. I had the components for it, but I didn't put it all together. So I showed up and it was a ghost town. I mean, 3rd Bat was already deployed. And so I got there and I was like, okay, packed an aid bag, and I got put on a plane to meet everybody, and landed in Bagram, and thought that I was then with my guys and this is where I'm going to be. And I was there for a few days. I'm like, no, you're actually going to get pushed out to Salerno, forward operating base there, and that's where your guys are.
Well,
so it was like
fucking drinking from a fire hose. Huh?
Yeah, it was like like this whole like, are these my guys? Are these my guys? Who are my and just getting fucking the shit smoked out of you the whole time, because like you're just the cherry guy. They don't you're the the guy coming in that, as far as they know, you've been in. You're one of the new guys that just got out of RIP. So I finally got there, and it was like picking teams for dodgeball. Like there was probably 15 cherries, brand new privates, in this formation, and the 2 platoon sergeants were there. I was like, I'll take the big blonde one in the back, and I'll take the next guy, to kind of divvy up these new guys. And I'm standing there like, oh shit, man, like this is how this goes. But yeah, it was a different kind of experience because they were already forward deployed, and I was just another one of the new guys. They didn't. I think even initially they were like, oh wait, they didn't realize I was a medic, until I got to where I was going, and it was a lot of the smokings and all that kind of shit. But
so from the time that you showed up into Afghanistan until you were out doing shit, what was that time period? How long was that?
That deployment wasn't much of a ruckus. So like there was, I think it was like Ramadan or something was going on. It was just real quiet where we were at. Like we did a few missions, but it was nothing terribly serious. It was probably 4 or 5 days, 6 days from the time that I got there. And I was just like, all throughout medic course, we didn't shoot.
Yeah.
So, and like in all the holdover time between, graduating, and we didn't even shoot in RIP. At the time, they do that now, but it was just like, it's the selection process. Then once you get to battalion, then your team leader, squad leader are going to tune you up on all that shit. So like I hadn't fired a weapon since basic training, and it'd been almost 2 years. And then they're like, here's your M4, like, all right, we're going out the door. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, fuck, I didn't even zero this thing. Like, they're like, well, you're the medic, don't fucking worry about it. Just sit in the back, and if anybody starts bleeding, so it was like this shit, okay. It was a real crash course. I was drinking from the fire hose for certain. And I knew how to do a trauma lane.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to be a Ranger medic. It's a different thing. It's putting all the pieces together, and it took some time. And luckily, I had a fantastic senior medic who tuned me up, squared me up, and other guys who wanted to see me succeed. And after they first tried to break me off to make sure that it was, they're like, all right, day one here, we're going to go for a run and see if you can keep up. And luckily I did, and it was like, all right, you seem like you're squared away. So now we're gonna get you dialed in.
Yeah, goddamn. So you wrap up that first deployment. Nothing crazy happens. You went back, and how long were you home before you had to redeploy?
6 months.
And during that time, was it still drinking for, like, did you get kind of more up to speed on everything?
Well, then you get back to battalion, and I was a cherry fuck again. I was a new guy because like I had been on this forward operating mission. I was out at Salerno with my platoon, but I didn't know any of the other guys in the company. So everybody gets back, and the other 3 platoons are like, "Who the fuck are you, new guy?" I'm like, "Oh shit, I'm the new guy all over again." This is like the 5th time I've been the new guy, in the 2 years I've been in, and so then it was learning how to live in Ranger Battalion, and it's like. It's not an easy unit to stay in. I mean, up until the point where you make rank, and even then, man, that's like constant scrutiny. Every little thing, they're looking at it, and at least at that time, for certain, I'm sure it's probably similar. But it was you had to earn it every single day, and I was the new guy, and I got the checks over and over and over again.
Were there any instances where you butted heads with anybody, or they really fucking railroaded you, or was it just what happened there?
Yeah. So after all this, you get to a certain point where like I'm a grown up now, man. I've been through all this stuff. Now it's been 2 deployments, and I feel like I've kind of like proven myself at least enough to not get fucked with about little shit. And there was one particular squad leader's E6. I think I was at E4. That just constantly, he was just riding my shit. Like he felt like my senior medic wasn't riding my shit hard enough. And it wasn't that I was ate up. He was just looking for things, maybe thought he was being a good leader or something like that. And I was like, we're going to fucking go. I don't even give a shit, and like, it's going to go hard. Like, stitches are going to be required. And I remember like he kept calling for me in the aid station, sending his privates to come get me so that he could come and like fucking like bring me back to his AO and like chew me out. And it was the first sergeant saw that happen, and like I was like, I fucking had a knife in my hand. I was like fucking fucked, because it had been months of this like, why are you're just fucking with me for whatever reason. And the first sergeant was like, you're not his NCO, and fucking leave him the fucking alone. Doc squared away. And so the first sergeant tuned him up, and it was fine. But a lot of that kind of shit gets settled in platoon combatives, where you get the opportunity to call out somebody, and you do the big circle, and like, all right, I'm fucking calling you out, and we're gonna do the jiu-jitsu thing here in the field in the middle of the whole platoon, and we'll settle this. I hope they still do that.
Yeah, I think more of the world should do that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think corporate America ought to fucking try that shit at least a little bit, but I think a lot of fucking problems would get solved. But so this was after your second deployment?
Yeah. It was like there was no need for it. There was no cause for it.
So taking a few steps back, the second deployment, you go to Afghanistan again. What was that deployment like?
So that was the very first day of that deployment was a Red Wings recovery for us. Oh, wow. And so that was it, like June 28th was the actual mission. And like we were still in Georgia. And we were getting ready to rip out anyway, and to deploy, and they pretty much put our platoon on a plane and got there. We landed in Bagram, and we had probably about 8 or 10 hours to pack up MREs and get ammo and everything, and then we were on helos, and we're up in the Konar on that search and rescue. And so we were up there for like 3 or 4 days walking around in the mountains. So it was like immediately, like that deployment, it was different than the first one, because it was like we are hitting the ground, we have a mission, and we're going on it. Yeah. Then we had a couple of other longer, bigger, long missions, not necessarily direct action stuff on that deployment. MedCap stuff is a really kind of a diverse deployment. Hostage rescue stuff, but it was sporadic. They were bigger things, but with a week, 2 weeks of downtime in between. Yeah.
In terms of the Red Wings stuff, what can you walk us through what that was like? Like from start to finish?
It was, yeah. I mean, it was an interesting. I mean, it's still one of those things. Like I've written about it quite a bit, and even in the moment, while it was happening, you could understand the significance of it, how big of a thing that it was, and how many people. It wasn't just us. There was a lot of people out there a lot of people were putting effort into finding those guys. and it felt, even in the moment, very historic. It felt big and heavy, and we understood the weight of it and what was at stake. And when we went, it was, we didn't know who was alive and not. We were assuming, we're operating under the assumption that these 4 guys were still alive, and we were looking for them. It wasn't like a recovery thing in that sense. But we landed in the middle of the night and had a patrol base there, and then took off from there and did. It was like the Ranger School type mission where they're actually setting up patrol base. We were setting up claymores and shit, and it was like, it felt like, oh shit, this finally is the job that we've been training for years, for me anyway. Like that was like the first real, like, holy, this is a fucking Army Ranger mission, that we're doing. And we have the right size element to conduct this, and we're, those mountains are rugged. And even for a group of people who are in, highly athletic conditioning, it was a challenge. I worked on, several of the guys throwing IVs in them and whatnot throughout the course of that few days. It was hot. It was, the first week of July, and the altitude was definitely a factor. We'd come from sea level. We'd come from Georgia, and we're immediately,
What was the elevation where you guys were at?
I want to say we were moving around between like 9,000 and 11,000 feet.
Yeah.
And it's hard walking. It's nasty. There was times when we were sliding down the rocks that were all crumbling and breaking loose. And I just remember thinking, like, dude, to conduct like a firefight in this would be fuck. As you're watching the locals who are like billy goats up this shit, like, and the kids who are walking, they know this environment. It's like, and it's like, how it's like no problem, with ease they're getting around.
Yeah.
And here we are, these, like, it was humbling as all fuck.
Yeah.
And it it was.
I mean, growing up in that environment and not ever being anywhere else in day to day, like, you're carrying shit around, like, I mean, I suspect, or I know that at least part of that is why so many MMA fighters from the Dagestan region are so fucking capable that way, is because they grow up in a somewhat similar environment, some of them. But yeah, I mean, like, you bring those people down to sea level and they're like, dude, this is a fucking joke, but it's interesting that they were just kind of walking around and that didn't have an impact in terms of, like, they weren't like, holy fuck, who are these guys? And you guys weren't reacting to them, or? Yeah,
they weren't walking through our patrol bases, like we're talking about, like, the next ridge line over. And like, as we're on Overwatch, we're essentially like glassing the areas. We're trying to just get movement. But yeah, the terrorist, the kind of terrorist villages and stuff, the kids were, the people were, there's people moving around. You'd see people moving around for sure. And we walked right through into one of the towns, and I remember there was a guy there who was definitely very out of place. He had the gold watch and a very clean white, clothes on, and it, like, everybody else was like snarly hair locals, dirt and everything else. It was like, this guy doesn't belong. But I remember walking through this little village there, and it was like, fuck, it was like a high alert kind of a situation. But it was like, everybody here is being cool, but you don't know which one of these people were involved, who were fucking pulling the trigger a few days ago.
Yeah.
And it was vulnerable, kind of a spot to be in. But with 30 plus guys, it was like, all right, if it fucking kicks, it's gonna go. But I think our PL and sat down with the elder there and was trying to get information. And but it was all heads on a swivel, all eyes up for that whole time, that 3 or 4 days.
For that period, did you have consistent, reliable comms with whatever forward base you were stationed out of, or whatever?
I imagine so. I mean, that was not the RTO. I didn't. I put an IV in the RTO, because you're carrying that big heavy fucking radio around for a couple of days. But I honestly, I didn't even have a radio on me as the medic. I was kind of occupied with other things, and I don't know. I couldn't answer that question accurately or intelligently.
Did you guys ever come across anything? Did you find Any of the guys? Did you?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we had on the second or third day that we were there, we had recovered Matt Axelson, and I was kind of in a different part of the Overwatch. We had split up, right, a little bit, and the patrols were going on kind of squad based, and I don't know if it was necessarily our guys who found it, but there was intel from one of the locals that said, "Hey, there's a body," and yeah, and it was, I think some team guys were pretty insistent on carrying him out, and it was a lot of respect there because we're like, we got a lot of hands, and I think we had a bag that had been dropped by Air Supply, one of the resupply drops, and kind of helped them out with that, but they were pretty insistent on like, we got this, roger that. So yeah.
Did you have any I guess intelligence or from a recovery standpoint, did you guys have any hands on the recovery of him or
I didn't personally. Some of the guys in my platoon did, yes.
Yeah. The reason I ask, and I'm curious, I know it, in different accounts of Red Wings, generally speaking, in the movie and everything, that there's some details as it relates to things being taken off of the body and things like that. I was just curious if you had any knowledge.
Yeah, I like I said, I was probably a kilometer and a half away.
In the rear with the gear?
Yeah, kind of, yeah, sort of thing. Yeah.
I gotcha. Yeah. Was there, I guess, what was the emotion like when you guys did come across and recover him? I mean, was there kind of an unspoken gravity to it, or what was that like?
I think up to that point, we were all really hoping that everyone was still alive. And so it was just like, the thing shifted a little bit. Yeah. And then it's, it got heavy for certain. I mean, it was serious before, but then it's like, okay, this is, it's changed a little bit. And I do remember when we got back to Bagram, when we landed, is when we found out that one guy survived, that Marcus survived. Yeah. And it was like, oh, thank God, because, as the time ticked on, it kind of was feeling very evident that nobody else, nobody made it out. And we were going to be recovering 4 bodies. And I remember being on the tarmac coming off of the bird and like getting that information, and it being like, it felt like after a lot of knocks, that was a win. That was like, okay, somebody came out, and that felt good. It really felt good. It's like the effort was obviously worth it. All of that effort was worth it. To bring back, the remains of those Americans, but it didn't feel like a loss, because he made it. Yeah.
Did you recover anybody else, or did you go back out after that?
No and no. That was our clip. We were up for about 3.5, 4 days, I think.
Yeah. So after that, you said it was a diverse deployment and there were sporadic periods of downtime. What was the next big thing that you guys did after that? Or kind of the highlights of the deployment, I guess.
So there was like 3 things that kind of like Act 1, 2, and 3 are the beginning, middle, end of that deployment. Red Wings just opened it up, and we kind of figured like, this is going to be if that's how we're starting it. Epic. And then it was a lot of time in the gym, and sneaking around to the other hooches there, and stealing the chairs from the PJ's tent, and like going in the middle of the night and taking some of the Pop-Tarts from where the SEALs were at, shit like that, like trying like
big ticket stuff.
Yeah, the what is it, idle hands or the devil's play thing, and you get guys in that environment who are they're itching to do something, and like you got is these other guys around you who are in other branches, and you kind of start doing those things that to occupy the time and whatnot, and so there was a bit of that and a lot of training, and because I think we were like, hey, give us something to do. We're here to do something. We pulled like a civil affairs medcap mission, which was cool for a group of Rangers because it's not really what we typically do, where we kind of went and helped infill a team to go and provide medical care to a small village, and I got to help out with some of that stuff, and so kind of see a different angle of things, a different kind of peek into a different type of job, and it was like right on the border. It was like a little border village that was strategically necessary for relations and all that. And then we had I think it was a British guy toward the end of the deployment who was taken hostage near Kandahar, and we went on that, and it ended up being a body recovery. But
before you jump into that, on the second one, on the MedCap thing, did you guys get into any ticks or gunfights?
No, it was real pretty. I mean, like you could see that, like when you come with that amount of force, we had 40, probably 38, 40 guys, Rangers, that like, usually people aren't going to start a fight with that element, typically speaking, it's just, you're rolling into the bar with a dozen of your boys, you're usually not going to be the target of, any kind of violence. It was really chill. It was just a cool, different experience. And it showed that, it showed me like the versatility of special operations and the different things that are going on and whatnot, that it's not always all about gunplay to win a war. There's other elements and other facets to it. Yeah.
So then the last thing, British guy had been taken hostage and they ended up killing him.
Yeah, they took his head off.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So
what was that publicized, or was it a big story at the time?
It was. Yeah, it hit the news cycles for certain. It was a rough one. I mean, there's no place to sit on the bird on the way back. It was like a 4.5 hour flight back, and so I had to sit on his body bag, and it just kind of felt like, wow, it was like I literally felt like I was sitting on a really big failure, and this person was like, that was what we were going there to do. And
do you remember what the circumstances with which he was taken hostage?
I don't. I do remember that he was asthmatic, and I remember that in the brief, and packing albuterol and stuff like that, and inhalers in my aid bag as a result of who the patient would be, but would never obviously use them.
Do you know if was he beheaded because you guys were coming, or would it happen before that, or do you know?
Yeah, I think it wasn't. So yeah, there was. I think there was there was a team that haloed in before us, and I think he was being held in like a small village, and they saw they landed in the wrong spot, kind of thing, and we had the idea was that we were coming in to kind of provide a backstop. And they came up into those mountains, and so that was a tough one, to end a deployment on. I mean, it's a tough one no matter what, but it was a money thing, it was a ransom thing, they were trying to get X amount of dollars for the person.
Yeah. Do you remember where about that was?
I just remember it was in the south. I remember it was a real long fucking flight from where we were at.
Yeah. All right, so you come back from that deployment. You sorted out with your one of your, what was it, a platoon mate or
he was a squad leader.
Squad leader.
Yeah.
So you about sorted out with a squad leader, and then you get ready to go. Now you're going to Iraq for your third deployment.
Yeah.
Right?
So on my first deployment, I was 3rd platoon's medic, and then I got switched to. I essentially ended up being the new guy for each one of the 3 line platoons. And so right before the Iraq deployment, I had just settled in. I'd been with 2nd platoon for the whole training cycle. I kind of finally got to know everybody after being the new guy for 6 months. And my senior medic was like, "Oh, you're going over to 1st." And it was like, right before. I was like, "Oh shit, man." Sorry, that was right before the 2nd deployment. And the person who was the new platoon sergeant was my cadre and rep, and the dude who fucking, you're like, oh, dude, like that guy's like, he's like not a ball buster, he's the ball buster. Yeah. And like, I'm like, as the medic, like you're in his pocket, like, I'm like, I gotta live with this guy, I was like, fuck. I was like, I would rather kick me out of Ranger Battalion than go and be this guy's medic. He was a fucking prick and rip. I mean, he was notorious for breaking people off, but he was very good at his job. And it was on that MedCap mission where we were sitting and waiting for the sun to come up, and we were kind of sitting back to back, and before we went into that village. And I remember asking him, like, "Hey, do you remember, is there anything that you ever like really regret or like feel bad about with like, what you did as a cadre. And he started telling me about, there was one particular class where it was really cold. It was like, it started to sleet and snow, and he was having everybody low crawl through, like break the ice with their face. And like, he's like, those guys, like we really put it on them, like probably a little harder than we needed to. But I was like, yeah, that was my class. And he goes, I don't want to talk anymore about this, doc, or fucking shutting this thing down. But the thing is like, the guy was incredibly good at his job. Sergeant Strait was, if his job was to weed out people who didn't really want to be there, that's what he did. And when his job was to be a platoon sergeant, he was a fantastic platoon sergeant. I mean, after the 2 deployments with him to Afghanistan and then later to Iraq, I wouldn't have wanted to have been a medic for anybody else. The guy was fantastic. Yeah. So we spun up, and I guess we were the main battalion effort on that deployment in 2006 to Iraq, and it was going again pretty good. We were into crit, and we did something like 100 direct action raids in the 3 months that we were there. It was really on a lot of that, like other part of the Ranger mission, the door kicking thing, and it was cool. So it was the diversity there. Each one of the deployments was a little bit different, provided a different look, but that was, we called it the summer of love. There was a lot of violence and beautiful, fast violence of action. Yeah. And it was it was a really fucking unbelievable time to be a Ranger.
Do you remember your first direct action mission where you were actually getting shot at, shooting back, and really getting it?
There's one that sticks out in my mind that it's just there very vividly. It was Op Simpson, and the details of that. There was like this. We'd been watching. There was 2 guys that we figured were in this place, and based on our video, and they were strategic about coming in and out of this little building, and we hit it, and it was like. It was immediate, where we had one squad that was coming up, a second squad was coming up to the house, and there was a guy in a flatbed truck with a vest on, and he sat up and he popped himself off. And
you watched it?
What's that?
You saw it?
Yeah, I was running toward the house. We had landed. I was with first squad, and we were coming toward the front door, and second squad, it looked like it erased them. And I'm just waiting to hear like fucking the call for the medic on the radio, and it was like that, like perfect silence for that split second after the explosion. It was like you're just waiting for it, and then the eruption happened, where they had somebody with a belt fed oriented on the door. So when first squad got to the door, they opened up on that. One of the new guys took a round at the helmet, sort of thing, and it was like fucking on. It was full on, grenade fight, and there was 10 guys inside the house. They had strategically only had 2 guys going out at any given time ever, because they knew they were being watched with the eye in the sky there, and like it was on.
What was the length of time that entire fucking firefight took place?
So that's the thing about like flow state, right? Is that time kind of becomes distorted. So like I can, like the things that were happening there to me really kind of felt slow motion-y. And it could have been, so there were squirters, a couple of them took off, and so the actual, like the meat of the firefight, maybe 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It was like the violence of action was pretty precise, and once the grenades started getting thrown, it was done, and like we outnumbered them 3 to 1, and you're better at that than they were, apparently.
How did it lead up to that? I mean, like what was the objective originally? You said it was Operation Simpson. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the name of it, and it was just we had intel on foreign fighters there who were. That was the thing at the time, is there was a lot of people who were coming over from other countries, and weren't Iraqis that were fighting. Those people were, they were coming in and they were getting paid to fight us. And I remember one of the people that squirted out the back, I shot, and he was kind of, but he was taking fire from, I think, 3 different positions as he was running, and he had 6 holes in him. When I got up to him, still alive, and I looked at him, I was like, this is a fucking kid. He's probably 14 years old, at best. With the interpreter come up, and I remember asking him, or through the interpreter, like, what would your parents say that you're here? And he said that, well, they'd be proud of me. And it was just like, what the fuck? And I remember this is something I wrestled with for quite a bit since then, because, you understand, like, I'm the medic and my job is to be the medic no matter what. And it was just like, watching, luckily none of the guys in second squad died. They all survived. They had some burns and stuff like that. But watching that happen and everything else in the 5 minutes leading up to that, and it was, wasn't the best thing to do, but I looked at the kid and I was like, I turned around and walked off. It was like, all right, you fucking chose your path. That's it. And we had a PA with us, and he worked on him. And the kid survived, But it was just like that real apathy. Like, all right, this is war, and you're the fucking bad guy. And like, it was my job to work on him, and I just didn't.
Yeah. I mean, is it though? Like, that's part of your guys' responsibility, is to work on?
I worked on plenty of people who we shot. Yeah. Yeah, plenty. Every other one but him. And it was just that moment of like, I just.
Huh. Yeah. So with any of the other people that were, enemy fighters that you ended up working on, did you ever ask them similar things, or why they're here, or where they're from, or anything?
I got detached, and it was just like, I looked at it like a K Prime lab. This is a skills lab, and if I can learn something or tune up my skills on this human body who's pumping blood out, that I don't really care about. If I can take something from that experience and give it to one of my guys tomorrow night, then I need to do the job. I had one guy that he got hit with. There's a little bird. He got hit with some of those rounds, and it splayed his testicle open. His scrotum was open, and he had the hole through his leg. And I took some shit for this, but his left testicle had uncoiled, and it's just like, fuck you, man. Like, they were vest makers, and I packed his wound with his own testicle, and he was yelling the whole time, asking for morphine and stuff. And I'm like, I've got two hits of it, and you're not getting either one of them, because your boys are still out in the wood line out there, and getting in with our guys. And I like to think of myself as I've worked on my empathy, since, I've really kind of, done the meditation thing enough, and to look at these things in hindsight, and to realize though that in that environment, you really, after a while of it, night after night, every single night going out, and your brother's about dying, and it's them and us, and it does something, for good, bad, or otherwise. In that environment, it's fuck them, even if you want to maintain compassion and empathy and stuff like that, and know that this person directly is not really a threat anymore. It's an interesting thing, because in that environment, after those experiences, it's like, fuck you, dude. Pain is your problem. It's not my fucking problem. Yeah. You made your bed, and now you're gonna fucking lay in it. Yeah. So,
what was the kind of overall mission set on that one? Where the one that you're just talking about, in terms of the guy's nuts getting, and if you could further elaborate, I'm curious, just so that I understand it right. When you said you packed, like, he had other gunshot wounds.
So the decapitation was in the upper left thigh, right? So you kind of have a gaping hole there, and but it had ripped open his scrotum, and the testicle had uncoiled, right? And so it was there. I'm packing it in with packing the thigh wound with the gauze, and I just kind of coiled the nut up and along with the gauze, and stuffed it in the hole. And I thought it was like still medically sound, It's like, what else are you gonna do with it? I'm not gonna clip it off. You got to do something with it, and to preserve it, maybe, I don't know.
So it was still connected.
Yeah, so like the testicles, like it's like coiled
I've
up.
never unwound a testicle.
Yeah,
before.
Yeah, it was a really interesting
ignorance.
thing. It's like oh man, like those like the kitchen machines that like you press it through and it like kind of swirlies the vegetable, where it's kind of coiled up, almost like a pigtail sort of thing, and like you stretch it out, and then
it's like a curly.
It's
fry.
like that with the testicle on coil like that. It's kind of wound up. So yeah, it was. I think I took some shit for that later from the CO. Like, you can't be doing that shit, so I mean, clearly, like, whoever
worked on him after that was like, what the fuck?
Maybe, I don't know. I didn't
or maybe they were laughing. I
didn't
know.
get too hard of a phone call, but I don't know. I don't know what the proper, that's something we didn't learn, in the medic course. We didn't, so I was like, I did with what I could, but there was a lot of the places, and a lot of these things blurred together, because it was like, even after that Op Simpson, we got called for a follow-on objective after that. So the same, like later that night, so we went back to, I think it was like blood, and like got more ammo, and it was like washing the blood off of us, and we had another follow-up mission. Nights we were doing 2 or 3 different hits, and so they really blurred together. A lot of them were vest makers, right, where we were going and hitting, and we would find the vests and the materials for making them and all of that when we'd hit the house. And it was a pretty regular ordeal where you'd have a couple people squirt, a couple people would hold their position, they'd get dead, and half of the time the squirters would get dead, and half the time they get reeled back in. But it was just that over and on repeat.
So that was the bulk of the deployment, was DAs on IED and vest maker type of operations in Tikrit.
Yeah, the Samara Tikrit area. That was our kind of our AO in 06. And
was that first op that you talked about, Operation Simpson? Was that the most busy or craziest gunfight that you remember from that, or were there any that were as bad or more so?
There was that was probably the most complete version in my head of what a gunfight would look like, because it's kicked off with a vest, right, that started it. You had the belt fed, coming through the door. You've got the elements of small arms fire, the grenades. It was a complete enough thing where there was, it's like, that's okay. When you think about like in a movie or something like that growing up, like that's the kind of complete package of they're shooting at us, we're shooting at them, grenades, bombs, the whole thing. Other ones, there was we just kind of overpowered people with our numbers and our violence. So it didn't when things kicked up, it didn't last very long. You have 3 dozen Rangers coming in. It's like, this is going to be over quick. And that was like the most fight that we had really put back against us was 10 guys. Because usually, it was 2, 3, 4 guys where you go in, and we had times when I remember going into rooms with 2-man, and guys was in the corner, and his AK-47 had jammed, and it was fucking right. Like, then we saw it later that the round, I don't know if he fucking loaded it backwards or whatever, but it was jammed, and he went to pull a grenade, and my buddy Mort he tapped him twice, and like he went down with a grenade in his hand. And then there's a secondary gunfight going on in the kitchen that was in a bedroom, but it's like, here's 3 or 4 people who are putting up opposition against
36 fucking dudes.
Who at that time were really tuned up, and they're doing this every fucking night. So it was usually over pretty quick. Whenever there was people who were going to put up any kind of opposition, it was fucking over quick. Yeah.
With 36 dudes doing DAs and shit like that, did you ever have instances of blue on blue where rounds are going through walls and almost hitting each other?
No.
You were pretty solid on the deconflict that way?
Yeah. Well, you have half of those guys are set up, to catch squirters. So you usually have two of the squads. So it's not like 30 dudes hitting a house. It's more like half of that number actually hitting, and the other ones are working on containment, and then you rotate nightly.
If you could, you mentioned like a movie. Is there a operation that you remember vividly enough to set up and almost walk through like it's a fucking screenplay that you could kind of describe that really exemplifies the type of mission that you were doing on that? The one thing I know that all you fuckers listening out there love the details on actions on like that. So if there's one that you could pick that you set it up that way, that would be fantastic. Also, is there if there is any fucking canine stories from that deployment?
So the night with the guy with the testicle, that night. We were using a dog, and the dog's name was Wudan. The dog was fucking incredible. The dog was the most violent one out of all of us. We love,
Go figure.
We love that dog, man. And
Wudan?
Yeah.
Wudan. That's cool.
It was a Belgian Malinois, and it was some of the most interesting wounds that I've seen were from those dog bites, the way the tendons stretch and get pulled out. But yeah, it was. I'm like, it's that line of like, okay, what?
There is no line here on Mic Drop. You cross. There's no such thing.
Yeah.
You can fucking trampoline over that fucking line.
Yeah. So like, again, I like, war becomes you. You know, when you're engaged in it, and you're there to do a job, and that job is violence. You know, and it's very difficult and not even necessary to do violence softly. Yeah. If you do it right, it's hard and it's fucking mean, you know? And so that night there was, I want to say, around a half a dozen people who squirted out of that building where they were making vests. And there was two guys that were in a I want to say it was a fig orchard. One of whom got hit by the little bird. The other one we found and you know, roughed up and then brought back into the house. I worked on the guy's testicle, and then they were still looking for 4 other people. And I went with one of those teams, and we were walking through these orchards and everything, and we had some visibility from above, but you know, it was incomplete. And we found another one of the guys and he wasn't coming out of his hole, so we let the dog on him. And Wudan did his job, earned his biscuits that night, and pulled the guy out from his bicep and detached the bicep pretty good. There's some good holes there.
Was the guy screaming when he got
it was like I'll never forget that blood, like blood curdling, like absolutely like terrifying. Yeah, like he knew he was fucking, I'm done. Like if he could have used his arm, he would have tapped out. But I mean, that dog was on him. And it was kind of that, like, as we were walking around for probably 2 hours in the muck and in the cold and everything, looking for this guy. And it was just like, fuck you for making us look for you, you know? And so I remember putting my thumb in his armhole as kind of a joystick to walk him back, you know, so that he wouldn't run off again. I'm like, I don't want to be chasing you through fucking dawn. And got him back. And yeah.
What were the circumstances in terms of did you kind of pseudo locate him, and that's when you sent the dog in? Was the dog giving an indication?
Yeah, we were getting intel from up top, right?
That he was in a certain spot.
That they had him to this area, and you know, and then we let the dog off on him, and fantastic result. Yeah. And it was probably, I think we had those situations happen. There's probably around a dozen times. There was probably a dozen different missions where the dog really did the work for us.
Yeah. And that was the same dog each time?
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure on that deployment, we pretty much, there might have been another dog that they rotated, but it always seemed to be Wudan who really got he got the glory.
Potatoes.
He took a bit of a growl at the sergeant major that nobody liked. And it was interesting because it's like he became such a part of our platoon that like, it was like he knew that like when like the guys didn't like somebody that he didn't like them, you know? Awesome part of the team.
So we're not going to have time to get all 12, but is there another one or two dog stories that you could share, since it's such a dog heavy industry that I'm in?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them went like that, right? And they kind of, again, they blur together, where, you know, you've got a squirter who is just being a fucker about it. You know, he doesn't want to get caught. Obviously, this is a pretty dangerous game of hide and seek that you're playing. You know that you fucked up. You know that you've been like, these are not people who we suspect are assholes. Like they're like, you know,
they're certified.
They're certified. There's a dossier, and there's like, you know, we've already gone through their house and found all their, you know, their shit. And, you know, they know that if so they're hiding pretty well. And it's, I remember more, because it's been a while. It was 2006, years of 14 years. The thing that sticks out most to me about it is, one, how effective and the dog is, how fast and what they're capable of. Two was the injuries. Yeah. And I remember one night that it was out in an open field, and the distance was just so far that we were able, we let the dog go. And so like we were fucking hauling ass as fast as we could, but obviously you're not going to keep up. The dog took down the squirter, and by the time we caught up to him, and you just hear him scream the whole way. He's probably 200-300 meters out ahead of us, and you could still just hear him, and getting there. And I remember his tendons and ligaments being like stretched and pulled out of the skin, and just being like, and stopping for a moment, because like at that point, like I'd seen some decent trauma. It was like, oh fuck, like that's a new one, But
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, having worked in the dog industry professionally for well over a decade, that's the one thing I think that surprises a lot of people when you see a legitimately trained, genetically fucking capable dog, do his job in the way that they're supposed to. It surprises most people how fucking capable they are at fucking people up, and how fast. And I think that's really the tricky part. I mean, a lot of times, if I had a nickel for every fucking time somebody's like, well, I'll make a fist and I'll fucking jam it down his throat and I'll gag him. And it's like, here's what you don't realize is that, that dog's mouth is their only weapon, right? I mean, in conjunction with their mind, but their offensive weapon is their mouth. And so you got, two fucking rows of serrated spikes and triangles, that when that dog decides to bite down, he's got hundreds of pounds of pressure behind it. And that's going into flesh. And it's akin to, it's like saying, I'm going to grab a fucking drill bit and stop it. No, it's going to rip your fucking hand off, and, yeah, I mean, I've got fucking dozens of pictures in my phone of dogs I've, sold to departments or whatever where, or buddies on different departments that send these, bite photos of, some asshole that got pulled out from a fucking wheel well of a dump truck or whatever that was a convicted fucking sex offender or something. And just like all of these stories and photos and examples of these dogs doing what they're trained to do is just God. I mean, it gives me the fucking heart on, every time it happens, because it's like that's the pinnacle of why I do what I do is providing dogs and training to people that where the dog is used and makes a difference. But were there any other if you could talk about the injuries to that guy and then one other bite that stands out from an injury standpoint, kind of how spectacular it was?
Yeah, so we had brought that guy back into to the original house that we hit, and I was told, hey, package this guy up, make it clean. I was like, okay, and you understand, like, okay, with multi-systems trauma that's going on here, I've got a couple of things that this is what, if I'm going to treat this patient right, I need about maybe 15-20 minutes.
Was he shot too, or just bit?
Was he shot? I don't think he was shot. Yeah. I don't think he was shot. But he had
the dog fucked him up.
Plenty of good dog. I mean, he had it on I think it was definitely his forearm and around his ankle, and it was enough bleeding in order to justify, obviously, IVs and everything. I had to go through a couple of things there, and there's a couple of things to package up. So I'm like, need some time. And these are also wounds that, like, this is a wound to a degree, but like it was kind of fascinating to me. I kind of wanted to poke at it, from an anatomy standpoint. Yeah. Like, if I pull on this thing, will this finger move? And so packaging that patient was one thing. And I remember like them telling me, like, okay, package the patient, and then something changed where we had an add-on mission. They're like, you have a minute and a half. Helos are inbound and you guys are going to exfil. I was like, well, which is it? Do you want me to package this guy, or, are we leaving him? They go, well, package him in a minute and a half. And it was kind of like, this is this major, saying this from the jock. And I'm
Bust out the Riggers tape.
I'm like, what the fuck you want me to do? But he's the same guy who got on me about, being a little bit callous with previous patients. I was like, do you want me to treat the guy well? Or do you want me to grab him by his tendons and throw him in the back of the helicopter? So we found a middle ground there. I threw some Band-Aids on him and went.
Are you like suturing guys in that environment, or just packing it and fucking?
No, absolutely not. No. Just at the protocol of time, for those types of injuries, you could. I think I might have actually put a tourniquet on him on his arm.
Was that bad?
It wasn't that bad, but it was kind of like, I'm going to slow the bleeding and just to make it not be so messy. And plus it's like, I got an opportunity to fucking practice the whole the whole thing with this guy. I'm going to practice. I'm going to go through my lane. So it was like, 1, 2, 3, 4 and the bandages, but I don't think, he ended up not having time to do a line on him or anything like that. And it was quick and go. So I didn't get a full patient history on him, I guess is what I'm saying.
You didn't check his prostate?
I tried. They wouldn't.
Tried to tongue his dumper and they wouldn't let me. In terms of any follow-on dog bite stories, if you could share maybe one more, just because I fucking love it.
I go one for the glory of the handler. We had it was another vest. There was a lot of vests going on at that time. It was just really.
Was that the most prominent threat at that time?
And so you get to the point where you get skittish because you've seen so many of them, and it's like, you're thinking everybody has a vest on. And the handler, I remember we were coming up on the house, and we had already been engaging with people on the rooftop, and there was somebody outside of the house as we were advancing, and it was kind of like, we'll put the dog on him, and the handler was like, wasn't sure if the guy had a vest. And he didn't want to let the dog go on somebody who didn't know if he had a vest or not.
Sure.
And so the handler actually just plugged this guy, the pistol. And I remember it, it was in a 9mm, and he emptied the whole clip on the guy.
No shit.
And then we left him there because it was just like, we have to go and hit the actual target house. And so he was there hours later, and we just assumed, man, they got a whole clip unloaded in him. And, we weren't going to, I wasn't going to rush in and try to, help him until after we knew. But we came back a couple hours later, the guy was still breathing. I was like, holy shit, man.
I'm gonna take a quick moment to bust your chops. You're probably the first combat veteran that's called it a clip, by the way.
Oh, sorry, Mag. Yeah, it's been a long time, man. Yeah. I should. I'll.
You're gonna catch some shit from the boys. I'm sure.
That's all right.
You might as well start with me. I'm just fucking with you, but
I appreciate it. You got to hold your friends and your to a standard.
That's right. So he dumps the whole fucking mag in this guy, and I mean, was he a bad shot or was he a lucky fucking dude? And was he wearing a vest?
It's just sometimes, we detonated in place. I think it ended up putting some other charges that we found in the house near him and just blowing them there. So if he had one on, we didn't know it.
Yeah. I mean, I would assume, I guess it depends on the vest, but you may find that out when you fucking dump a mag into him.
Yeah.
Depending on how it's fashioned.
Yeah.
But, so the handler dumps a mag in him. Were there any other instances where that handler used that dog and you had to patch a guy up?
Those are the prominent ones that I remember. I mean, again, it happened, but those were definitely the more severe ones where it was clear that the dog was the difference.
Yeah.
That. I'm not saying we wouldn't have caught those people, but we might not have, and it definitely would have taken a whole lot more risk for our lives in the process. And those were in that deployment. Those were the two standout ones where the dog definitely made the difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. As that deployment progressed, did there get to a point where you guys kind of got almost burn out, op tempo wise? I mean, or how did that?
Yeah, I mean, it was short deployments.
The 90-day
deployment. So if we had to go a couple more months, burnout would have. I think that would have. Yeah. It was the right amount of time, and be able to come back and take a couple weeks off.
Yeah.
I missed the last couple weeks of that deployment though. I was. I got a hernia, essentially tore open on running up a bowl. We got set down on a mission, kind of in a little bit of a valley, and the target house was up, and I was having to run up this hill, and I just felt that shit go, felt it tear, and continued on through the rest of the mission. But then after that, putting on the armor and everything, it was a pretty good one. It was an inguinal hernia, just shouldering any weight. We had 2 other medics for the platoon, and so the last 2 weeks of that deployment, I was sent home early to get surgery.
Did you make a full recovery? Does it still fuck with you at all anymore?
The surgery was good, and then it was about 2 years ago, the mesh failed, and then I had to have another one put in on top of it.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
What was your first impression of Nick Irving when he showed up?
Very moto. I mean, like, he was like young. I mean, he was like real young. I don't know. He's like barely 18 years old.
Yeah.
But he was like this supercharged, motivated. Like, it was like almost to his detriment, like it's like you calm down a little bit, man, but like he just, it was the fucking Ranger thing, and he was like, he wasn't shy about it. He wasn't passive about it. He was a little ball of muscle even at the time. And, he wanted to fucking go and do it, and he was a very quick learner. That first deployment that was his first deployment.
Yeah.
And he definitely, he got his feet wet real fast there, and then went on to the sniper section and stuff. But,
were there any, oh, go ahead.
No, he was a great Ranger, across the board.
What, were there any missions that you remember being on with him that stand out?
I remember, so after Op Simpson, when we had to go back to Balad, we were sitting in this hangar and refitting our ammo. And I remember the follow-on mission was going to be at a chemical warehouse. And so they gave me a box of atropine injectors that I was then going to have to tell these guys who 6 of them just got, blown up. They survived, but like, hey, we might get our faces melted off on this thing. And I remember Nick standing there and like really, I remember his face in that moment in that hangar between what was a pretty quintessential like combat moment and what could be another one. And we're sitting in this calm in between and like, and getting new batteries and everything. And here's a kid, 18, he might have been 19 years old. And he just seemed like his face, he was like kind of prepared for it. He was, there was not that there was like a look in everybody's eyes like, oh shit. It was like, this is what we have to do. But I do remember that moment where like I'm handing out atropine injectors and like being like, okay, you guys remember from basic training, like if your face starts to fucking melt, stab yourself in the leg. And he was just like, the look on his face was like, this is where I belong.
Yeah. Wow. He's a consummate fucking warrior, no doubt about it. He's been on this show a few times, and I would always love having him on. But all right, so as that deployment kind of wraps up, you said it was 100 or so direct action.
Yeah, it was on average. There was one a night. There was like I remember 1 or 2 nights where we're browned out. Where we didn't go, and then there was plenty of other nights where we were 2, and I think once or twice we had 3.
Yeah. Do you know ballpark what the body count was versus?
We were actually keeping tallies on the whiteboard until that same major. He said it was unprofessional, but we were at 38 when he made us erase the ticks, and I don't know, that was probably 3/4 the way through the deployment.
Yeah. Did you guys lose anybody?
We didn't.
Yeah.
No, and it was like one of those things where like you're looking back on it with how close some of these things had happened. Where I still to this day am like so thankful, that like all of our guys came back from that with, yeah.
Did anybody get wounded that you had to work on of your own guys?
Not severely. It was like
That's amazing.
It was real wild, man. Like real close calls. Like I was saying, like, a guy, took the round in the helmet, it's 7.62, hit your fucking head. It's usually not a good thing, but you literally, it was like a lot of those types of things were like bullet holes through pant legs and shit,
Wow.
Where like, it like clipped the calf a little bit. And, the suicide vest detonating, the 6 guys right there, they got blown back, but there was like some minor burns and scrapes and things like that. It was, it was really, I was waiting the whole time to hear medics screamed out, and it just didn't happen.
Wow. That's awesome. I mean, I think it's a testament to the selection process, getting the caliber of guys that, that Ranger battalions produce, as well as the training, and there could be a little bit of luck in there. Who knows? I am curious in terms of as that deployment wound down, where was your head at in terms of kind of, had you had enough? Was there a tipping point where you decided, okay, I've done what I wanted to do and now it's time to get the fuck out?
I was actually hoping to go to CAG selection.
No shit.
That fall, and I had that set up, and the hernia, when I had to have the surgery, I had been training for it that whole deployment. When I got that hernia, I had had the surgery was like a month before my selection day. I'm like, well, that's not going to happen. And then my enlistment was up shortly after that. But for me, the timing of it would have been perfect. Like, I get selected, good, I go over there. If I don't, then I'm out of the Army. Okay. Yeah. And so that was like the one thing where, not to say like it was left unsettled, but it's like that, like I wanted to go and see what that was about. And I would have obviously stayed in had that been the action. But at that time, after that injury and those deployments, and it felt like it was time to move on. Yeah. And my moving on again was like to go to selection, but then that didn't happen. So it was like, I'm moving on this other way. Yeah. And going and making all the mistakes that people make when they transition out of the military was the next step. But
we'll certainly get into those here in a second. I am curious, taking one step back on that last deployment, were there, to your knowledge, any of the raids that you went on, foreign fighters that you guys legitimately identified as being from somewhere else?
Yeah.
And where were they from? Do you know?
Yeah, Saudi Arabia was a big one. I remember consistently, and they would always have, not always, but plenty of times, just stacks and stacks of U.S. dollars. We had one operation. It just kind of like occurred to me where a good friend of mine, actually a couple Bronze Stars given on that one mission, where there was a couple of guys as sentries out in an orchard outside of this town, and we knew that. And a friend of mine went in, silenced and eliminated them. I was right behind him when that happened, and then we went in and hit the town. In the town, there was a couple of houses where people were in, and we eliminated one target as he was getting out of bed and reaching for a weapon. But and I'll never forget, immediately afterwards, the sound that came out of the other room was a child crying, and a kid was asleep in the crib, and it was like, fuck. But there was it was like $40,000 US in brand new $100 bills underneath the mattress of the baby's crib. And that was a theme that we encountered a lot, was like large amounts of like US dollars in hundreds, crisp, brand new. That on Op Simpson, I think we recovered, a few $1,000s on different people, like that were getting paid that to.
Did you take it?
So that was the thing, is like there was a
no comment.
So there was a private who found that stash of cash in the crib, yeah. And it went over the radio. He's like, hey, I found, there's US dollars in this thing. And
oh wait, no, I didn't.
Yeah, and like there's like all the guys are like, what the fuck did he say? Like, shut the fuck, we can't take that back now. You can't put that back in the box now, yeah. Man. So
toothpaste out of the tube, right?
Yeah,
there,
but the major who was hanging out in the Jacques was like, he was really pleased, because like now here's something you can set out, and it was a win for him, for certain. But like the guys were like, oh, we could have thrown a hell of a fucking party. We go back and that. But yeah, like, I think I'd like to say for the most part, when it came to the times when it was important to be honest, we were honest. Yeah. And
did you guys ever find out where it was being funneled from, or was that above?
No, that was there was people who were working on that who were with us that.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'd love to have somebody like that on the show at some point and get into kind of the weeds of the. The same way they do like counter narcotic stuff is, the dismantling of the supply of those networks. But anyway, all right. So back to so the timeline doesn't work out hernia surgery wise. So now you decide to get out and you did a little contracting.
Yeah, not immediately.
What did you do? Right, like what was the first couple of weeks of being out?
My dad and I took our Harleys to Mexico.
No shit.
First thing, yeah.
What kind of Harley do you have?
I had a 2006 Street Bob.
That's a long fucking trip on a bike like that.
Well, from Phoenix. Oh, so like I got out and drove 31 straight hours from Columbus, Georgia to Phoenix, and had my the bike in the trailer kind of thing, unloaded it, and kind of I think like the next day my dad and I took off and went down to Puerto Penasco, to Rocky Point, like a 3-hour motorcycle drive from Phoenix. Yeah. We hung out there with a bunch of his fireman buddies. And yeah, it was a cool like first week or two. But then it was like I didn't have a plan after that. I knew I wanted to go to college.
This was like 07?
Yeah, there's like late 06, early 07.
Okay.
And I was like, what do I do now? You know, and so I started throwing applications out in different places. I need to get a job. And
did you consider going back to being a firefighter?
Yeah, that was the plan. That was absolutely, but like it takes time to, even having done that, I would still have to go and test.
Yeah.
And so the department that I worked on before was a smaller department, and I had aspirations of going and working for the larger city. I wanted to work for my dad's department, Peoria, and I was throwing out applications for just kind of day jobs to, make money to buy beer with while I was, getting everything together. And I remember I submitted, it was 160 different applications and resumes to different places, bars and shit like that, and no callbacks at all. Nobody.
No shit.
Yeah. And it was just, I don't know, maybe it was intense or something. And I finally, my first job after being an Army Ranger medic was, I got a job working at a salon that my little sister was cutting hair at as a receptionist.
No fucking way.
Yeah. I got paid $10 an hour under the table.
Is that why your hair's long now?
It's like she just gave me a good dye job. I got the highlights done. But it was kind of surreal. But there was other benefits to that because I was the only guy around. And like so I went directly from an environment where there was no women to all women, and it worked out well.
That's surprising, actually.
Yeah.
Like,
so, and I think I got a job as a bouncer at a place eventually, and then
you didn't get in trouble as the salon fucking.
No trouble. No, I just
didn't get caught anyway.
Yeah, it was all good. Yeah. It was really good.
That's a fucking trip. Was there a transition struggle for you at all in terms of taking a job like that and then the bouncer and whatever? I mean, was there an element of not finding purpose in what you were doing?
Yeah, absolutely. There was that, like, I'd done this thing, and I felt like I was like 24 years old, and I felt like I've really accomplished something. I've proven myself. And I had this thought that, like, if I showed this to anybody who's hiring somebody, that they're going to acknowledge that. Here's a person who, if, for nothing else, they've proven for 4 years that they can show up to work early. Even if you don't know anything about the military beyond that, or about special operations, or about any of these courses, that, like, here's somebody who's been able to be dedicated to something. And I think that people just didn't really understand. Yeah. And in 2000, late 2006, 2007, they're like, people didn't know what to do with you. Like, well, I had a guy ask me when I handed off my resume to a bar, the brand new bar that was open. I was like, just be a bar back. I'll fucking do the dishes, man. I'm not trying to manage anything. Like, give me the. I have no problem being the fucking new guy. I've done it. I'm a master of being the new guy. Yeah. And I'll work for it. But the guy asked me, like, well, have you ever, it's a service industry. Have you ever served before? Have you ever been a server before? I was like, well, I served my country, kind of thing. Like, does that? And there was just nothing. It was like, yeah, okay, we'll look at this and call you back. I never did, sort of thing. I'm like, I just want a fucking shot. I just want, like, I applied to Jamba Juice, like for $8 an hour. I'm coming out of being a Ranger medic, and I'm like, I was like, what the fuck? And so I started to get a little bitter about it. Like, do I have no value in society? And the more and more that I would submit and not happen, it got, you get that, like, feeling, internally, and then maybe you present yourself with that feeling as you move forward. Like, you become that person who's kind of like bitter about things, and because you're bitter, it doesn't really play well. But I started the testing process for the fire department at that time, and I think there was still something on the table there, and I had convinced my dad to go run a half marathon with me off the couch. Man, the guy's not, like, he was kind of, exercised a little bit. So let's go do this new experience. And I just needed new things at that time. I've been out for a couple of months, and we went and ran this half marathon. It was great. Like, it was a really cool thing to go do with my dad. And we were real happy and having coffees afterwards, and found out that one of my guys got killed in Iraq on the deployment that I would have been on had I stayed in. And I remember it hit me like a fucking truck,
Do you remember the circumstances?
I'm pretty sure it was IED, and I do know to the extent that his injuries were to the extent that he needed to be criked. And yeah, it's just it's like, fuck. I felt in that moment that I had let him down, that I wasn't there to do the thing that I was supposed to do. And it's not that he didn't have a great medic. There was a somebody with the same amount of training, similar amount of experience. You just feel that way, and you put it on your own shoulders. And I was like, I got to go back. So I was in the testing process with the fire department, and I was like on my second interview, and I had an opportunity. I was trying to go into the Air Force for pararescue, and I had too many tattoos. The Air Force wouldn't let me in. And
holy fuck.
Yeah. And like, they were even saying like, we're not taking any prior service now, unless you've had the same job in the branch of service prior to this. I was like, well, I was a special operations medic. I want to be a PJ. I want to be a special operations medic. They go, holy shit. You're like one of the only people we've seen who can do this. But I have a leg sleeve. I have a tattoo from my knee to my ankle. And they go, that's disqualifying. You can't have that.
What the fuck, Air Force?
Yeah. So we back channeled. I got a hold of going back to Bob Vaughn. The PJ was working on Peoria Fire Department under my dad. He goes, you want to do this? We'll back channel you. And there's a team in Davis Monthan's in Tucson. And he goes, they have an in-house selection that they do. If you can pass their in-house selection, then they'll backdoor you and get you into the pipeline and do it that way. So I go, okay, fucking when's the date? And I prepared for it. I was like centerline focused on, I'm going and doing this. And I went and did the selection. I passed it. There's about 30 guys there. They were pretty much all prior service, like recon cats and a couple other Rangers and shit. And it was a good time, man. It was a good like smoke fest. We did all this stuff. We did the PT test and everything. But then it was just like, the break off thing. I was like, I missed this, and they still couldn't get me through. But that selection date was on the same day that my fire academy would have started. And so I had to choose between the fire department or to go to the selection. And I chose the selection, and I gave up my spot on the fire department. And
it still didn't work out.
Yeah, and they still couldn't get me in. God. I mean, there was an E9 there who was really pushing for me, and they couldn't get past the bureaucracy of the guy has tattoos. Meanwhile, half the guys on the team, on that particular team, are fucking decked out, covered. But once you're in, it's a different thing than getting in. So,
God, that is so fucking dumb.
So I was like, now I got nothing. Now I'm really like, fuck. What do I do now? And I had a good friend of mine who I was in Ranger Regiment with, who was a medic. I was fucking drinking, and I was like, what do I do, man? This is my career path. I just gave it up. And I wanted to be on that department since I was 6 years old, and I just gave it up for this. And he goes, fuck it, just come to school with me. And what? He's like, yeah, I'm going to go to school in Indiana. So I packed up. I go, yeah, I'll call you back, and started throwing shit in a backpack. And I just 2 days later was driving from Phoenix to Indiana, and ended up going to college and doing that. And about three quarters of the way through that college experience, I had an opportunity. I was starting to kind of like funnel that college experience into wanting to work for the DEA after I graduated, and I had an opportunity from one of my friends who was also a Ranger medic in my company. And he's like, hey, you want to come and do the DEA fasting? They need a medic to contract. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. I got about a year left in school. And they go, no, we need them you need to be here in like a week. Like, bro, I got finals, I'm in college. And he goes, do you want to do this? Yes or no? Like, I need to know, like, now we need to submit the paperwork. You need to go through and do all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in. So I had to go to all my professors and say, I need to take my finals a couple weeks early. And they go, we haven't finished the semester yet. And I was like, I don't care. I just need to take these. I need to take my finals. So I breezed through my finals and was on a flight to the East Coast.
You passed them all?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah. Yeah. College was what it was.
Was there any element of being the salty veteran in college and being like, are you fucking kidding me?
Oh yeah. Well, like I was studying. I was really interested in why we went to war. At that time. And so I was studying essentially international relations and politics, and a lot of the classes I was taking was on terrorism and political violence, and these discussions would, the whole course was discussions about these elements. And there was time I had somebody in a class call me a terrorist for fighting in Bush's war, and it was like every ounce of self-control to not pick up my fucking desk and throw it
and
at
prove
his
that motherfucker right.
face. Yeah. And it was just that, like, I literally had to get up and walk out of the classroom, you know, like those moments of contention. And you have, it's tricky, you know, because you're like, I've experienced these things that we're talking about. And even the person who's teaching it hasn't really experienced it. They've read it in a book, and good on them.
Yeah.
But these elements of it, and like, you're getting this a little bit twisted, you know,
Yeah,
about.
well, it's all in theory. And that's the problem with people like that. You know, when most of the people that teach those courses, and a lot of the kids that go through that and then ultimately, you know, become, you know, assistants and then professors, and, you know, and then they're fucking pundits, and then they're political advisors, and, you know, and they're people that have never really fucking done anything.
Right.
You know, what's that adage? Those who can do, those who can't teach. You know, and that's one of the big problems. I mean, I applaud your ability to not smack the dude, although, you know, I probably would have, and it sounds like the motherfucker probably needed it, you know, but you know, that whole, I think, you know, principle that exists in so many of our universities, and if you want to call them higher educations, I'd call them more like lateral education, not higher, but you know, they paint an incomplete fucking picture, you know, and they, again, it's all in theory and not in reality, you know, and there's a big goddamn difference between those two. But and at any rate, so when you took those finals, did that put you to the point where you were graduating, or you just finished with that semester?
No, I was done with that semester, and I pretty much took the next semester off and went and did, only did a few months doing that job. And it was a cool job.
Yeah.
It was definitely a different view, different perspective than being a ranger. You know, got on the ground, and, you know, my buddy picked me up at the airport, you know, like.
Was it like the Blackwater experience essentially, or was it?
Yeah, it was through Blackwater, was kind of the conduit. Right?
Oh, okay.
It was still Blackwater.
Yeah. Was it just mobile security type shit, or?
No, it was, so the gig was to be attached to the DEA FAST team as their medic, because they didn't have medics in house. So they had like a same with the comms. They had like a soft comms guy and a medic who they would attach. And but it's cool. I got to do a lot of different things. You know, I got to run an aid station there, and work with their version, the Afghan version of what they were standing up of the DEA, and do training with them. And so it was a different experience. You know, we had a car, and we could, you know, we went out, you know, like we went out into town, you know, into Kabul, and like the day that I landed, my buddy's like, hey, you want to go? There's like a gathering of people getting together, like whatever. We went and had some beers at somebody's house in downtown. I was like, what the fuck is this? Is a totally different thing, man. You know, than any other times I've landed in Afghanistan. And like there was especially at that time, there's still more freedom, and but it was cool. It was a worthy experience. And I ended up coming back after, and then I was a college student who was now not only the salty guy, but a salty guy with a bunch of fucking money in my pocket. So like it got real interesting. Had a really good time for the rest of that college experience.
Oh Christ. Two things. When you were on with the DEA FAST team, was there any behind the curtain shit that you kind of uncovered that you're like, this is really how this shit fucking goes down, or were you kept kind of out of the loop?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't on the team. I was attached to the team, right? Like I didn't go through
just being in that environment.
Yeah,
I mean,
a lot of the stuff, because like a lot of stuff that I was studying even on my own and in these classes up to that point I had a pretty good idea of the situation, but to be able to see it firsthand, you know, and I don't think anybody, maybe there are some people, but very few people really have the whole picture no matter what, right? Like, there are people out there that do, they're just, you know, there's not that many of them. And that was only one element of what I was doing there. There was other things that like people were working and like the team, half of that time that I was there, the actual team that I was attached to was on vacation. So it was like I was trying to find stuff to do, and there was other elements that were around that having a soft medic add on is always, it's like, hey, can I fucking come along with us. Let's do this thing. Let's do that thing. Yeah. So there's a little variety of stuff in there. And but it was a great experience to then be able to bring that back into the classroom as well. Because there's another thing they're few and far between, but there are professors in universities who understand like this is a tool. This person, this human being in my class is an asset because they have something that I don't have. Yeah. And I had one professor particularly who would make a statement, about Afghanistan. They would talk about, the rise of the Taliban and things like that. And then they would look to me and literally in front of the class ask me, like, would you agree with that? So there were people, it was rare, but there were people that really, truly valued that in that environment. Those were the classes I loved to go to because I felt like my experience meant something in that spot.
For sure. Did you at least once slowly and dramatically get up when they asked you that and just like take over the class and be like, well, what I found was like just completely dick stomp them?
I just no, yeah, they're not stood up. I would do it from the seating position. It's there's generalities, right? Yeah. That in order to teach especially an undergraduate level class, like you have to kind of speak in generalities of like this is what happens in Afghanistan. Like, well, in certain provinces that's correct, and in other places that's not necessarily culturally accurate. Like there's the same thing with living in Mexico. There are certain places where it's fucking dangerous, and I would not go with my family. Yeah. Certain states and then there's other places aren't. And if you, to generalize the whole thing is a good way to begin an understanding. But
it's the nuance that really steers true understanding. That makes sense. When you were just the medic for the FAST team, were there any cool operations or anything that you went on with them, or was it pretty benign by comparison to your Ranger deployments?
The cool missions there, it was usually to hit like places that were storing like a lot of opium. The problem with it was having to get permission from the local elders to be able to operate in that area, and it was a lot of dry holes, essentially, places where we knew there was bundles, they knew you were coming and moving. Yeah, that wasn't always the case, but that was a frustrating element of it. It's like, if we didn't have to fucking ask their permission, we could be more successul at this. Yeah. But I'm like the medic who's like, I'm not the guy planning these ops. Like, I'm literally just sitting here and let me know if somebody needs a Band-Aid. Yeah. I'm not going to get too involved with you guys' thing. Yeah. But it was really cool. Like we had, there was a King Air jet that we were able to take and to different places and do kind of a different element of stuff where for me, like kind of more, it was the first time doing any kind of like low profile type stuff where like you're getting in a taxi cab and you're dressed out in a certain way and you're going and doing surveillance stuff, and like those, like definitely not what most Rangers do. They have a reconnaissance element that I wasn't a part of. So just the few times that I got to do that, I thought it was like the experience of it was pretty cool. And again, like I'm kind of like very junior person there, just observing what is going on with everyone else and trying to learn as much as I can without speaking.
Yeah. No, it's fucking cool, man. I mean, it seems like big picture wise, opium plays such a huge role in a lot of facets in that country and in our relationship with theirs, but the amounts of opium and how it's essentially we're funding our own fucking enemy there in a lot of ways, and it's a real muddy, messy fucking mix.
It's a fucking quagmire for sure. It's a knot. And like as soon as you start to think that you figured it out through reading and through experience, you're like, oh wait, no, okay, there's another kind of a knot within this knot, and
all right, so you do that, you come back, and did you finish college or?
I had 3 classes left. Yeah. But they were spaced out to where I had to take them in 3 semesters, and I got to the point where I was like, I don't really like. I went to Indiana to go to school.
Was it a big school or
Purdue?
Oh no shit.
Yeah. So
fucking Purdue. So that makes me think one quick thing then, like a combat veteran, Army Ranger, did a medic stint for the FAST team. Now you're a student at Purdue. Like, how much ass did you slay at fucking Purdue? Because there's a lot of it there.
Yeah, it was decent. So like I was at the time and one of the things actually why I could have stayed on that deployment. I could have extended and continued to do the DA thing for quite a bit longer. It was a really cool job, and the guys were really cool. I loved doing it. But I was training. I wanted to be a professional triathlete, and I'd been training up to that point. And it's really difficult when you're in Afghanistan to find a swimming pool to train in. So I finally actually did. It was like 3 days before I left, but it was a small one. Anyway, like. I was on the triathlon team there at Purdue, and I was
plenty of hot ass in
there. Yeah, and like so when you're the guy who's like, you have a little bit more experience than the other guys around you, and you've got $80,000 in your bank account, and you've
Yeah.
got a nice apartment, and like, your bar is stocked with 18-year, Jameson, and the
And
other
Miller
kids
Lite.
are slamming Keystone, just like, you want some Patron, or you have to drink that piss. It was good. It was a really good time. I had a really, really good time. A lot of really good times there, in college.
So three classes short. Do you have any desire to finish that out, or you just don't give a fuck?
I got what I came there for.
Yeah.
I did. I was never really, I never went to college with I want to get a degree.
Yeah.
That was never my driving force. I wanted the information. I wanted to know why we are in Iraq and Afghanistan. I wanted to know more about these wars that I had just fought in. Yeah. And I also wanted to be around another one of my guys, the dude who I was in with, and being able to be his roommate was phenomenal. It was a very necessary thing when it was. And I got back from Afghanistan that last time, I think in like 2009. I was like, I don't really want to be in Indiana for the next year and a half. I want to go out to Colorado and snowboard and climb and get on with my life. Yeah. So the degree itself was never a motivating thing. And the idea of going back, I don't like to move backwards.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I won't go to school. I went to college after again and did another program for physiology when I was there, and same thing. I was like pretty much a semester from graduating, and I left again because I was like, I don't fucking care. Yeah. I think I got like 240 something college credit hours right now.
You got the information.
I got the information. Yeah.
So speaking of that, taking one step back, the Iraq and Afghanistan. So having fought there, having gone to college, trying to seek some sort of reasoning as to why we're there and reconcile that. Looking back on it now, where you sit both, professionally, personally, mentally. What are your thoughts on both places? And I know that could be its own fucking podcast, yes. But just, a synopsis of each.
It's another knot, right? But I think what we did in hindsight, it's always, hindsight is typically 20/20. We can look at it a little bit more clearly. We entered into a war with an ideology that is malleable. Terrorism, like a war on terrorism, you think about that. That's not a definitive enemy, and we have never had in Afghanistan. We've never had, and this has come out, like we've never had like a definitive strategy there, and it changes depending on who is in command, and it just kind of continues to roll on. And the people who are actually engaged in the fighting have done everything that they can. They've done a phenomenal job, but there's been, from the get-go, there hasn't been a clear, concise definition of what it is that we're fighting and what does success look like. And that has been the primary factor that has kept us engaged in this thing for so long. And not that the feelings of the people matter so much, but like that leaves an entire generation, multiple generations, 20 years worth of Afghan veterans now, it's a GWAT veteran, who are going, what the fuck, And I'm one of them, okay. And you start looking at, depending on which approach that you want to take to it, you look at like the financing of war and like where the Afghan military was at in 2000 compared to where they were at in 2013, where their numbers ballooned from like 2,000 to 200,000, and every single one of those soldiers who's making $1,800 a year is costing predominantly the U.S. taxpayer close to $40,000 a year in their training, in their boots, in their in all of that. So the amount of money that is changing hands in order to keep us engaged in that, there is somebody there along the lines is benefiting in a way that who is in enough of a position of authority to keep that thing going so that those revenue streams keep going to where they are. And to me, that is the, you say like follow the money. That's the most logical explanation in a nutshell of like what got us started down the road and why we are where we are. Now, I understand like there was like with the events of September 11th, there was something that needed to be rectified. That was an egregious attack on American soil, and there needed to be decisive action against that. Concise is probably not what happened. There was action, and it was the people who were engaged in the action who were who had the boots on were doing everything that they were told to do for the most part, and executing it exceptionally. But then the thing just keeps changing and keeps changing, and what the fuck? So that's the nutshell answer, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I would largely agree. I think, to me, looking back on it, having been in for several years prior to 9/11, during and then after, from where I sat, it's and admittedly, it's going to be more biased in what I'm about to say based on where I was sitting at the time. I'm not naive to that fact, but it seemed like a concise action happened initially. It happened. Okay, we're going in. Went in and largely kicked the hornet's nest over and whipped some ass for a few months. To me, it was at that point where it's like, okay, kind of got them on their heels at least a little bit. They've scurried into the hills at least. They're not running shit anymore and just doing whatever they want with complete fucking freedom. Now what? And then that's where it just kind of dissipated into ambiguity and nobody really knew what the fuck that looked like. And I think it crept into exactly what you're talking about after that. Afghanistan, even as muddy as that is still far more clear cut from my perspective than Iraq.
Absolutely.
And I was in Iraq. To me, again, I agreed 100%. Hindsight's 2020. I'm curious to get your thoughts on Iraq too. But
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that. Obviously, most wars now are pretty political. Mm-hmm. I think that what we did similarly, right, where there was an action that was taken, and then after about 3 months, the main effort of what we were attempting to do had been completed. But then you had this military, you had all these people who had these jobs before that now they weren't, and we had this. I think we had an opportunity right there, and again, it's hindsight's 2020. Was to do something differently. And when those people were looking to us to go, okay, now, how are we going to feed our families, all that moment of like, what it would have cost us to set something up there and then get out, in hindsight, would have been a lot less than those people eventually going, I got to fucking figure something out to feed my kids here. And when there's an option, to make money doing something that we would consider on our side to be, nefarious, and starting to, manufacture. And this is fast forward, but like manufacturing suicide vests or taking, burying IDs and doing those things. Then, as a parent, I'm like, fuck, like you have to do something, And so we ended up creating a lot more people that. I think we're engaged in things from a standpoint of just trying to, and I'm not justifying those actions, right? You have a choice to make, but things got murky as a result of that. Anytime a group of people are without meaningful employment and without an education, they are easily more easily motivated into violence for a small amount of money.
I'd say probably manipulated.
Yes, absolutely. Indoctrinated, and we see that in a lot of, we see that with a lot of organizations, gang organizations, they're recruited in a kind of in a similar fashion.
Yeah. I agree on Iraq. It's one of the more common questions I get asked, and I do like to ask of combat veterans that have been there, is kind of what their take. I mean, my take very simply is that, because I think where a lot of people struggle and to me, served or not served, there's this, almost ideal of, you don't want to think that, that there's even people that are considering thinking that these guys died in vain, and to me, it's very easily and justifiably no. And that, to me, with all of us, and I suspect that you're very similar to me in that way. And I think most service members have the notion, the internal notion that, we all volunteered to do, whatever our government decided that we should be doing to the best of our ability, and that's what we did, and irrespective of why you're there or who's pulling the fucking strings or whatever, is that, our country collectively puts the people, in the positions to tell us where to go, what to do, and how to do it. And a similar percentage of the population rogers up to go get their hands dirty on behalf of Uncle Sam. And it really can just be that fucking simple. Hindsight's always 20/20. Well, it's not 20/20 going into every one of these situations. And, and so to me, like, just knowing that all of the guys that didn't come back, they died doing a job they love with guys that they, love and trust and for people that they love, and so I don't think it needs to try to be figured out any further than that, because I think it's just it's counterproductive, and there's no good that's going to come out of it. You volunteer knowing that that's an option, and that's going to happen, and you see it happen, and that's just part of the fucking gig. But at any rate, I appreciate your insight on it. When you finished and you decided to move to Denver, what was kind of the thought process now into doing what you did there, and then ultimately transitioning into deciding to want to write for a living?
So again, I was trying to do the triathlon thing professionally, and Denver, Boulder area is where the best triathletes for the most part in the country live, and I wanted to compete against them and do that. And so it's almost impossible to make a living doing that, even if you're like, it's like there's maybe about 350 professional triathletes in the US, and maybe 10% of them actually make a living off of it. So you have to be like, so I coached, alongside and did that thing for people who were coming up, and I actually ended up opening a gym and with my fiance at the time. And that ended up not working out. And
either one of them?
So she left, and that ended up causing the business to go under. There was a little bit of...
she wasn't Canadian too, was she?
No. She was a yoga teacher, though. So there's a theme here.
It's the fucking pants.
It's the pants. It is the pants.
The only reason any guy goes into a yoga studio most of the time is the pants.
It's nice that I think 7 out of every 10 women now travel in yoga pants as well. Anytime you're in an airport, it's like a yoga studio.
Provided they have any business wearing them, yes.
Yes,
because there are some that don't. But at any rate,
but that went under, and I had other gyms and other stuff going on. But in the wake of that relationship going and the business going, I didn't I was pretty much on a friend's couch. Didn't have a place to live, and she had taken it all. I mean, the ice cube trays, included, and
that was nice of her.
Yeah, and the hardest bit was the dog that I got after I got back from Iraq, probably 3 years before we met. She took the dog as well, and I was like, I can let all the other stuff go to a degree, but that one was a hang up for me. I got accepted into another program, a college program in Northern Arizona, and I had kind of packed up what I had left, to including the little shred of dignity that I had, and it was gonna head south, and I just couldn't get around leaving my dog, and so the next morning,
I feel like a fucking mission took place.
The next morning, the cops knocked on the door and asked me if the dog was in my friend's apartment, and I was arrested.
No shit.
Yeah. There was 3 felonies that got slapped on for that.
Goddamn felonies.
Yeah.
What kind of dog was this?
It's just a little frumpy mutt, man. A little pound mutt. But so she had claimed that I broke into her house in the middle of the night and all that stuff, and so now the college was out, right? I didn't have that option anymore.
Were you convicted of any of those?
No, it was all thrown out. Like the whole time they were going through the process. I spent a few days in jail in the county, and then which is a cool bit on its own.
Why are you in here? I stole a fucking dog.
Yeah, and all the guys were just like, that bitch, like they were like, I deserve to be in here. I stole a car. I was hopped up on meth, and I stole. I'm like, you shouldn't fucking be in here, man. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, it's just kind of how it breaks sometimes. But like, I listened to the 911 call afterwards. My attorney ended up getting it, and the crying and like, oh, he's a vet, he's Iraq, he's a Blackwater guy, he's dangerous, and all this stuff. And that's all it took. The cops showed up to the front door, like thinking they're gonna have to fight me, and I'm like hungover as all get out. I'm like,
You're like fat Thor sitting there.
yeah, definitely haggard Thor, man. That's me.
What the fuck?
So it really like I couldn't leave Colorado, and I was real down and out, and back on my buddy's couch, and not have a job, and I didn't have anything, you know. And now I was facing charges, and I was out on parole, and I didn't know what to do. I was writing, so I started writing, and I started writing about anything and everything, and there was just something in me that cracked, and I was writing, and I did that and didn't show anybody into that stuff for a year and a half. Now, all those charges ended up getting thrown out, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that she was a bitch with a prosecutor. You know, like I was trying to go to my grandma's birthday, you know, out of state, and she's like, no, he's not allowed to leave, and so she wouldn't give permission. Like even the prosecutor was like, all right, this isn't awesome.
You poor bastard.
So they threw it out, right? I mean, it still cost me, I think, like $15,000 in attorney's fees and all that.
Did you get the dog back?
No.
Fucking
No,
Christ.
I went into the police station right after I got out of jail, and I went to file a stolen items report for a dog to the same officer that arrested me 4 days earlier. And the guy's like, "You gotta be kidding me! Get out of here, man!" I was like, "No, man, that's like," and I had all the paperwork of like, I could prove that I had owned this dog for 3 years before I'd met this woman, and so, but he's like, "I'm not filing this report." I'm like, "You came and arrested me because she said that," you know. Anyway, so I never got the dog back, and but now I was stuck in Colorado, and I'd been writing a lot, and a friend of mine who wrote for a at the time a popular military blog site that I didn't have any, and the whole veteran thing I wasn't tracking on that necessarily, and he wanted me to write a story about being a medic in Iraq, and give it to him, and he used it under his name, you know, because like he had to have a quota, and I wrote about Op Simpson and that night, and it resonated with people, and people were like, "We'd love more of this," and I was like, "I've been writing this whole time," so that's how Lest We Forget came about, and I'd been slugging it away at school and at work for years, and when that hit, it was just like I didn't really think more than like the people that were my company, really, maybe 100, 150 people were going to give a shit about this story. It was a way to kind of capture what it felt like to be a ranger at this particular time. And it just went, and I was like, what the fuck? And like I made more in a month on this thing than I did, you know, working 60, 70 hours a week in my gym for the last year. And I was like, what? Like, this is a thing. And so that's when I was like, I'm fucking out of here. And I sold everything that I owned, minus a single backpack. If it didn't fit in that backpack, it wasn't coming with me. And I moved to Costa Rica, and I was in Costa Rica, wrote the second book, The Follow-Up on Assimilation, which had heavily to do with that process of getting out and, you know, having the dog taken and all those things. But I was like, shit, I really enjoy writing, and I'm good at it, it seems like. And people dig it, and I'm going to keep going. So started traveled through like 50 different countries, and was on a challenge to see how far I could get. A friend of mine, Marty Skovlin, presented it to me while I was traveling. I was like, let's just see how far we can get from Denver with nothing but $100 in 3 weeks. And
how far did you get?
We got to Slovenia.
No shit.
Yeah.
On $100?
Yeah.
Were you handing out blowjobs and truck stops?
I think that was Marty's gig while I was napping in the bushes. But we leveraged our community. We were like, hey, help us get to the next town. And so people would they were betting kind of, they're like, I'll give you 10 cents a mile that you get, or 5 cents or a penny a mile. And like, we set up some other stuff where like, if somebody donated $5,000 to this thing, I'll get a tattoo of your business logo, the size of my hand. And like, so
did you do any of that?
I did. Yeah. I got the tattoo on my thigh here. It's of the company that paid $5,000 for it. So all the money that we raised went to a charity organization that helps veterans transition. Cool. Right, helps them with resumes and helps them in a lot of different ways, suicide prevention, all this stuff, a lot of different things. And we raised, I don't know, $25,000 or $30,000 in that 3 weeks, and it really felt good. I was like, I had this mission. I was with another guy who gets it. It was a guy, Marty was a ranger in First Ranger Battalion, and to be able to spend that time with somebody else engaged in this mission where we were, sleeping on the dirt, and it felt really good. And the momentum from that just carried for me. I just kept traveling and writing. That's where my third book came out of, was those experiences of indulging myself in all these different cultures and experiences. And yeah.
So, I mean, at that point, you sold everything. I mean, did you have enough? I mean, just thinking of it like logistics wise and realistically, I mean, how are you supporting yourself traveling to all these different countries and writing?
Yeah, I mean, traveling is not terribly expensive when you're a single guy and you're willing to be, like you sleep in a hostel that's $7 a night, and I also had then royalties coming in from Lest We Forget. And then I sold my truck, I sold my snowboards, I sold my bicycles that I was racing with, I sold everything minus this backpack. So I had enough of a cushion. It was sitting there where I felt all right, but the money that was coming in from Lest We Forget was ample. I mean, I was saving probably 85-90% of what I was making while I was traveling around the world, and just being a dirtbag, camping out in places, and if people are like, oh yeah, you crash out of my place, whatever, cool, awesome.
Any weird close calls when you were doing that, like spidey senses going up, people fucking with you or anything, or was it pretty?
I had a time I was traveling across Australia in a van, and I think I was in Brisbane, and I've been surfing there a little bit, and I was camped out. And I get this knock at the van door. I'm like kind of settling in. I'm eating some fucking stew, and this guy, this old guy, was, I opened the door. I'm like, he's probably 55, 60 years old. Like, what's the deal? And he's like, hey, so, hey,
wanna fuck?
Yeah. And I was like, what? Oh, yeah. He's like, we see you busy right now? And I'm like, yeah, just eating dinner. What the fuck? He's like, yeah. So, and like I glanced down, and his dick is hanging out of his pants, and I'm like.
You're like, come on in.
It was like this slow closing of the van door, like the slide door to the click and like the lock. And then it was like, oh, fuck, like that guy's out there. And then probably immediately after, it's like, I have to piss. I have to go. And I was like, I'm not going out there right now, kind of thing. Like that guy he's feeling a little rejected, like this could get bad. But that was probably the closest bad call that I had.
God damn. Yeah. Well, during all of your travels to these different places and writing, is there kind of a coolest place that you remember being? And then also, is there one place that inspired you writing-wise the most?
What struck me, like holy shit, I didn't realize, because there's places where you're kind of amped up about before you get there. You're excited about, like, I wanted to go to Thailand. I've been thinking about Thailand for a long time. You go, you're like, okay, this is what it is. But it was the Yukon in northern Canada, like in Alaska and into the Yukon, where I was like, I was just blown away by the freedom and the space. And, there's it would see more moose and bear than people. It was just awesome to just camp out in this crystal clear stream with salmon in it, and there's nobody around. It was just majestic. And I wasn't thinking that like northern Canada would be this incredible place, but and so that is like Baja for me as well, where I was like, I wasn't expecting anything out of southern Baja, and it is wide open and wild, and you can camp out on a beach there for a month, and have nobody fucks with you. It's just warmer there, so like
that's how America used to be then.
And I really look at it like it's like how California probably was in like the 40s and 50s, where it's real wide open and whatnot, and like so like the places that surprise you, I think, are the ones that are really. But like in order to do that, it's like it kind of requires like I'm not going to plan. I'm just going to go
fucking wing it,
and the experiences of a place largely have to do with the time and the people who are there, a lot of just really cool experience with other humans.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've taken my kids on long camping trips the last number of years over the summer, and we have a general plan of here are the places we're going to go, but that's it. Like we're not lining up fucking activities or hotels or whatever. It's like we'll figure it out when we get there, and to me that's my favorite type of fucking traveling. Because to me, like when there's an itinerary and it turns into a job, you know, and like it takes most of the fun out of it, because not much is a surprise. Like, well, we planned on doing this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to go here, and then this day we're going to do this. And to me, yeah, like it sucks a lot of the adventure out of what's supposed to be a fucking adventure, you know?
Well, and it creates an expectation at the same time of like, oh, and we didn't hit that marker. And now there's an element of, you could be disappointment, like, oh, we didn't. So
you failed, go back home.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And they've like, to leave it open to, you know, like I've always said, like, the adventure doesn't start when the trip does. The adventure starts when something goes wrong. So like when I'm not planning, like something's going to happen, you know, like I had a blowout on that Yukon highway, on the highway, on the Alaskan highway there. You know, there's not a town, you know, for hundreds of miles. And I had a spare, but I didn't even know it because I gave myself 24 hours when I landed in Alaska to find and buy a vehicle that I was going to drive south. It was just kind of the game I was playing, like make it interesting, you know? So I had consumed a beer when I was in RIP. We were sitting there cold and like trying to get our minds off of the suck. And like, we started making a list of like, how many states have you had a beer in? I think at the time it was like 5 or 6. I was like, I want to have a beer in every state. And so I was on like, fast forward then to this trip, like I had visited a good ranger buddy, this guy Nathan Ellis in Hawaii. He was living there. I had my Hawaii beer, and I flew to Alaska where I bought my van and had my Alaska beer, and then started driving south. And I had North and South Dakota were the last 2 states I had left. I had 48 ticked off. And, you know, when like there's a lot of opportunity for shit to go wrong, and trips like that where there's no planning, but that's when things get interesting. That's where there's adventure. That's where, you know, you have to react to, and then that's where the best stories come from, you know, is having to figure that out. So like, I didn't even know if I had a spare tire because like I bought this, like I landed, met, you know, I looked on Craigslist, found this van, gave the guy $5,000 for it. And I never even registered the thing in my name. And I drove it on his, like the title was in the other guy's name all the way to Panama. I think I did like 11 border crossings with it, and
holy shit.
But like it was just a lot of this, like, this isn't your vehicle, this is a different guy. I was like, no, it's fine, it's cool, no, todo bien. Yeah. So, but like those elements are, you know, that's what makes travel interesting, you know.
Did you like in all the places you've gone? Do you know how many countries you've been to? Have you kept track?
50
countries.
Yeah. Portugal was my 50th, and then like since my daughter was born, I've been a little bit like we've been chilling out for the last 3 years in our place. I built our house, and like
built it?
I had it built. I didn't stack the bricks myself. I cleared the roadway it's in the desert. Like I made the road, you know, took an axe and a shovel and did that thing, and then cleared off the property by hands, about ½ acre, and then designed the house, and then had a guy build it who knew more about concrete than I did.
If you don't mind me asking, or if you don't mind answering, I guess is a better way to say it. What did it cost for that property down there?
At the time, I paid $65 a square foot for a custom build.
Yeah.
It's gone up a little bit, but you know, you're looking about $100 a square foot
that's almost double.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still way cheaper than here, but
I mean, that's all concrete, right? So it's concrete roof, like it's a solid.
Yeah, that's neat. In terms of the 50 countries that you traveled, were there any hiccups? I mean, with it being post 9/11, and then some, obviously, with customs in any countries, or like any hang-ups with it, shit like that?
Only coming into the U.S.
That's it, huh?
Every other country is like, welcome. And I come back to the U.S. and people are like, looks like you know, why were you here? Why were you there? They see all the stamps, you know.
Yeah.
Why do you have an Afghan work visa? Yeah. You know, kind of thing.
Bend over, I'll show you.
Yeah, it's like, the only time I've ever been hassled, pulled into secondary, and given the deal has been coming back in the U.S. Yeah. Lauren, my partner, my wife, she got put on a government watch list in the U.S. For 2
yoga
years.
Pants.
It was a yoga pants. Yeah, it got her. So, but she was already an undocumented worker in Mexico. Got kicked out of that country. But yeah, like, so we had a lot of trouble traveling through the U.S. when she was on that watch list.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, so a lot of like Walter Sobchak moments, you know, like, oh, I didn't, you know, fucking fight in Iraq and Afghanistan to have you give me shit.
Fucking
you
tell me,
you know, like I'm like, and then she's like, just calm down, take your breaths, you know. It's like, no, I shouldn't be treated like this, you know. But it's people are doing their job. But I just always found it ironic that like any one of the other countries I've ever gone to, they're like, welcome. And America's like,
no, there's I mean, I have a huge heartburn. One of my best friends, Shane, I mean, he lives out of his truck and travels all over the place. He's a nomad that way. And, you know, I get a lot of firsthand accounts from him of just the degradation of legit freedoms in this country as it relates to living that way. Like, you almost can't do it anymore, you know, or, I mean, you can't do it to that level anymore. And there's pockets where you can, you know, it's a little more feasible here or there, but it's like, the motherfucker can't, I mean, you can't even stay overnight in a fucking Walmart parking lot without getting the cops called on you, or, you know, you're at some fucking park or BLM land with some asshole knocking on your window. You can't fucking be here. Like, do you have a permit? Did you pay? Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, I'm out in the middle of the fucking woods. Like, and to me, like, it's such a fucking travesty that our country has come to that. You know, it just, I mean, I hear what you're saying on Baja being like the last bastion, or, you know, Yukon, you know, places where like I can see why people, and I've even thought of it myself, northern Idaho and you know, parts of, you know, anywhere within a few hours of Yellowstone, and just, you know, places that are really out in the middle of fucking nowhere, where that's about the only place you can go anymore to be left the fuck alone. Yeah. And even then, like, don't pay your property taxes 1 year and see what happens. You know, like, you can't own anything. You know, it's just, it's frustrating. And I find myself more and more wanting to live that way and just almost cut everything loose and just be like, dude, fuck it, you know? But anyway, fascinating shit, man. You live an amazing life. I love the inspiration that I feel, frankly, of hearing you talk about traveling the way that you do. And it makes me want to do it, honestly. For everybody listening, I would bet it's the same. And I'm right there with you. I mean, the times that I do, I always have amazing stories and memories from it. I for sure need to do more of it. But so essentially now what? I mean, obviously you're writing, but is there a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan? Or is it just you're writing and what happens, or...
So I've been jonesing to get back on the road. You know, it's been 3 years. We built a nest. We have it now. Our daughter's about 3.5, and she's jonesing too. She's like, I want to go to new places. She's saying that. And so our plan had been about when she hits about 4 years old, coming up here this spring, that we were going to go and travel as a family for at least a year. Yeah. And that, like, really the game plan is to go, 9 months to a year and go to new places, go to a different country, live in another country, and then come back and like hang out in our spot in Baja for 3 or 4 months and go and do that. The plan that we had made, because my daughter is, she has citizenship in Mexico, the United States, and Canada. She has 3 passports. Oh, wow. So I thought it'd be a really cool family trip to start off where we're at in Baja and, head north toward Alaska to get like an RV, right? Something that, like, something small, 24 foot kind of thing, enough that has a toilet and a sink in it and a couple beds, and head up to Alaska and then skirt across Canada and then go down the East Coast all the way down to Yucatan near Belize, Mexico, and then cut back across. So essentially make a giant circle of all of North America. Yeah. And to be able to, like, I've been, most all of those places, but to get to have my daughter experience these things and be able to now experience them anew through her innocent eyes, and to give her that, before she even starts, kindergarten, to have those travel experiences. That's the goal, right? Is to really teach the child through experience. I think it is. There's somebody wrote, writer, I don't remember, Twain, but said that was Emerson. The only knowledge comes from experience. Everything else is information. Yeah. And so you talk about like what you can get education-wise in a university. It's great. You get a lot of information, but I'm not entirely convinced that you get knowledge. Amen. So I really want to teach my child through experience. She's bilingual already. She's speaking both Spanish and English.
Do you and your wife?
Terribly. She's correcting me. We try to read her in Spanish every night, and she's like, "No, Papi, that's not how you say it." And I'm like,
"That's fucking awesome."
All right, dude. I tell her, I go, Papi's job is to keep you safe. Yeah. Your job is to teach Papi Spanish. So, and she's like, okay, and she'll repeat it back. She's like, my job is to teach you Spanish. All right, cool, man.
That's fucking hilarious.
So
God,
yeah, awesome. I'm like the kind of ignorant immigrant dad who doesn't speak the language, and like
that's so fucking cool, man. In terms of just thinking of it, being a father myself, is there a thought process or a plan in terms of like what your guys' goal is once she's at that school age? Like, is it, because at this point it's like, do you go with like a Mexican-based curriculum, an American a Canadian, like in school, an online thing? Like, what are your guys' plans as far as that goes, or have you thought that far ahead?
We've thought about it and discussed it a lot, and I think it's inevitably going to be a bridge that we cross when we get there.
Yeah.
But there are school opportunities. They have a Sierra School and a Waldorf School not too far from where we're at, and they're small. There's plenty of opportunity between my wife's job and mine to homeschool. My wife's the educated one. She's the one with a master's degree, and so she has elements that she can teach. I can teach other things. Not that that's optimal, but there's also so much more opportunity now, especially due to our current situation with online schooling. So I think as long as we have an internet connection, that it's probably going to look like something hybrid, where maybe half of the time, maybe one semester of the year that she's in a physical brick and mortar school, and then we're traveling through other parts, and she's keeping up on her coursework that way through me and through mom. But we'll see. She's 3.5, and she's already in a kinder care, where she's got 4 or 5 other kids with her, and they're all some of them only speak Spanish, and some of them only speak English, and they're really learning through each other. And that's me, that's a really cool thing, because that's an opportunity. I've always wanted to be fluent in multiple languages, but to have it integrated at that age is
there's no there's no ability to recreate that. I mean, no matter how good you are, how much aptitude you have towards language. I mean, learning it at that age is second to none. I think that's a great plan or foot forward in terms of her, because I do think it's imperative that kids go to school with other kids, for at least part of the time, because the social interaction and the street smarts, if you will, and the networking, and that's a big part of fucking life.
Social skills.
Yeah,
I know people never step foot in a university, but they're incredibly successful because they have terrific social skills.
Yeah. On the transverse, I know people that are, have PhDs that are socially fucking inept. That you can't hardly have a goddamn conversation with them. I mean, it's just painful. That's really neat, man. It sounds like a hell of a thing you have going on. But at any rate, where can people find you? And if they want to check your books out, I know most of them are available on Amazon, including the ones that you've collabed with people. But is there kind of a one-stop shop if people want to either get a hold of you, find out more, or stalk you in any way?
I try to make myself as easily findable on the internet and as difficult to find as possible in person. Right. So I live on a street that doesn't have a name, and I don't have an address and all that. But if you pretty much type in Leo Jenkins to Instagram, Google, Twitter, Facebook.
Not Leroy Jenkins.
Not Leroy. Leroy. It's Leo _Jenkins and this and that. You type in Leo Jenkins into Amazon, all my books are there. Yep. If you go through my publisher's website, Dead Reckoning Co., this book right now, Lucky Joe, is available. You get signed copies of this.
Oh, cool. And
then my previous book, War and Pieces, is on there as well. And then there's talk right now of bringing some of my previous works under their moniker. Awesome company, awesome veteran-owned, operated publishing company that's doing a lot of good right now for veteran literature.
Awesome.
And really getting behind, we were just talking about before, who are the people who are writing? We're trying to be those people now, guys like David Rose, who's done 4 or 5 books as well, coming out of a recon Marine background. And we finally have this company with Dead Reckoning that is we want to be that support to get you guys to that point, and people, and so that all you have to focus on is writing these stories. And for me is my first venture into fiction. So to be able to do what Tolkien did and take those experiences and turn them into these parables and these stories that you can you can educate people without it being and this happened in Iraq, and then this, we did those books, and those books were important. And now we're doing other stuff with it. But that company, Dead Reckoning Co., is a good place to find signed copies. And then Amazon, of course, is cool. But all 100% of the proceeds, if you go through Dead Reckoning, it's either going to a veteran-owned and operated publishing company or directly to me. I make more money that way, Amazon, again, good distribution, but we're trying to take their cut out. They've got enough money.
Yeah, no shit.
But that said, they're all there on Amazon as well.
Okay, that's great stuff. Is there a work of yours that you're most proud of?
I'm proud that I'm continuing to work at this, because I know I'm not there yet, and I really think I'm just getting warmed up. I think the thing that I'm the most excited about is always the thing that I'm currently working on. And it's a weird thing with writing, is like a lot of these projects like that, like this book, I finished this book months ago, and I'm already working on 2 new books. And so like I'm like, the work is, I think, what I'm proud of. Yeah. And there's not one, I like that there's not one thing that I'm hanging my hat on, because like I had the war memoir book, Unless We Forget, and then I had the transition book with On Assimilation, I had the travel book with First Train Out of Denver, and then a couple collections of poetry. And actually right now I feel really good about, I'm the editor for 2 volumes of poetry that's collected all by veterans, right? So we put the net out there and said, if you're a veteran and you're writing, give us your work, submit it. And we just did the second volume, which is called War and After. It just hit like 3 weeks ago. And to be able to give a voice to a couple of hundred people who didn't have, platform before, and to take that highly condensed, emotionally packed material in a poem, these experiences that we have, and to give that to the general public and say, this is what we not just one person, not just me went through, but this is our generation, our GWAT generation. Yeah. And they're true poet warriors who are able to condense those intense situations into and experiences into this beautiful poetry, and raw and like guttural. So being able to be the editor for that, and to introduce that, and to be the one to kind of have put that out. It's not my work, but I'm really proud that I've gotten to a point where I can help other people get their work out.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a hugely important part of it. I think that's where a lot of guys struggle, is they don't know what they don't know, and it's hard for them to even get started. So fucking great on you, man. Last question. In the medic in you, do you keep a fucking med kit, like a stout med kit, at the house on you when you travel all the time? Or
I got 1 in each car, and 2 in the house.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you're traveling, do you keep one in your backpack or anything?
If it depends on the type of travel, but yes, I always have some type of, for this type of event, I don't. You know what I mean? Like I didn't, like when we left.
Because I got a fucking blowout.
Because I was pretty confident that you were going to have what we needed, right? So like, I think the best piece of equipment in any medic's arsenal is their mind. Yeah. Right. It's their ability to react to a situation. And, just like, there's plenty of things in this room that could be used as a weapon. There's also plenty of things in this room that you can improvise and use.
You can pack a wound with this fucking mic sponge.
Maybe with a piece of clothing or something like that, you can get it done.
I got a Miller Lite tall boy that'll take care of just about anything.
Yeah. Right. But if all else fails, put alcohol on it.
Yeah. Fucking A. Set it on fire. I appreciate the hell out of you taking the time to come on. You're a fascinating guy. You've done a lot of amazing things, and it's an honor to sit down with you. I appreciate you coming on.
It was a true pleasure. Thank you so much.
I'd like to take a quick second to shout out and thank our sponsor for today's podcast, Origin Labs and Jocko Fuel. Jocko Fuel is a great product. He's got a ton of products actually within the Jocko Fuel line. The guests and I enjoy them on the show. And outside, I take a lot of the supplements. I've got some of the Origin Lab jeans, boots, gis, and it's just all around American industry. They do a fantastic job really re-revolutionizing American industry from start to finish. It's all American made, all American sourced. Everything start to finish is made right there in-house, and they really do a phenomenal job creating the products and fulfilling the whole ball of wax. They've been a huge supporter of the Mic Drop podcast for a while now. And I really can't thank Jocko Fuel and Origin Labs enough for the job that they do for us. And so thank you to you guys. I'd also like to say thank you to our other sponsor, Resilience Premium CBD. Resilience is excited to offer all Mic Drop listeners a 20% off discount on all products for 2 weeks from when this podcast is live using the discount code MicDrop at checkout. That's 2 words, MicDrop at checkout. I'd also like to say that Resilience is a great company that works in conjunction with Trico CBD, and all military veterans and first responders receive 35% off. Yes, that's 35% off for all military veterans and first responders, and that's through the Military and First Responders program. You just have to sign up at resilientcbd.com/military first responders discount. In terms of about Resilience, generally speaking, it's a premium CBD that I use. Again, it works in conjunction with the Tricos brand for the everyday athlete. That's www.resilientcbd.com. And Resilience was really born with the founders who are military veterans as well, personally experienced the effects and impact that CBD had on their own mental and physical obstacles. Their focus was sharper, mental stress was calmed, fitness stamina increased, and their bodies felt less pain, inflammation after super intense workouts. A lot of times, most people and people are able to either wean off entirely or significantly reduce pain management therapy. This is a shared vision among the founders that this incredible supplement had not only changed their lives, but had the power to provide unbelievable benefits to family, friends, athletes, fellow veterans, and ultimately the entire fitness community. So big shout out to Resilience for their product as well as the Tricos stuff. We sure appreciate their support. My pleasure's all mine for sure. And to you assholes, I want to thank you as always for tuning in show after show and continuing to give Mic Drop Podcast the support that you guys do. Without you guys, we wouldn't be where we're at. So until next time, choke yourself. And this is Mic Drop.